Good morning. We're going to get started with an invocation from Dwayne Case, pastor of Northeast Church of Christ, and followed by that will be the Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilwoman Nikki Nice.
Good morning, everyone. You may be familiar with the text in 1 Timothy 2, where Paul tells a young preacher to pray for those who are in authority, that as we do so, we may lead a quiet and peaceable life in all godliness and reverence. Let's pray together. Father, mighty God, sovereign Lord, creator of everything that is and that is to come, we pause in this moment to acknowledge your presence. We thank you, Father, for this opportunity where we could come and speak to you before we continue with our daily routine. We thank you, Lord, for being a God that cares about us. Father, right now, in your word, you promise that if we pray for the peace of the city, and you will give it peace, and then we too will prosper. So now, Lord, I come specifically in this room for your elected officials, those who you have positioned strategically to lead us, Father, that, Lord, though the lights are on, the mics are hot, papers are before us, decisions are to be made, yet still every single person in this room, we have cares and concerns that are heavy on our hearts, plans in our minds, Lord, that we would like to achieve. So, Father, we pause and ask you to be with every person, every leader, every citizen that is represented in this room. That, Father, first of all, we will always lift our hands before you, vulnerable, open, understanding that you're the only one that could care for us. You're the only one that can answer our questions. And if things are decided on that we may not like, Father, yet I pray that we will all work together for the greater good, that you, first of all, will be glorified, and that, Father, our lives will be better for it. So now I pray for equity. I pray for justice. I pray that righteousness will run through these streets. I pray for the hearts of everyone that, Father, that are involved in the constant daily care of your people. Keep us and bless us now. And I pray for the proceedings that will follow, that, Lord, everything said and done, you will be honored and glorified. These things we ask and pray in your Son's name. Amen.
Please face the flag and salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I call this meeting of the City Council to order, and we will begin our proceedings with item 3 from the Office of the Mayor. We have a couple of resolutions, and then we also have some citations to present. So I'll make my way to the front for that. All right. If Stephen Keel, why don't you join me up here, Stephen? Stephen is our Employee of the Month. Well, you will be if this resolution passes, Stephen. I like your odds, though. We want to learn a little bit more about you and your work in the Utilities Department, and so I would ask the clerk to read this resolution for Stephen Keel.
Whereas Stephen Keel has been a city employee for 10 years and is a System Support Specialist 1 for the Engineering Division of the Utilities Department. Whereas Stephen provides technical support for computer hardware and software components, configurations, upgrades, and installations, as well as diagnosis and repair for failing desktop and portable system components. Whereas Stephen serves as an Information Technology Department contact for the Utilities Department and provides information and recommendations to his division regarding upcoming changes. Stephen also assists with the editing of the Water and Wastewater Geographic Information System and with the filing of engineering documents for efficient retrieval, and manages the responses and document upload for open records requests involving the Utilities Department Engineering Division. Whereas Stephen always provides exceptional technical support and training to other city employees, often earning recognition for his ability to solve complicated issues. Stephen attended Oklahoma City Community College while working for the city full-time to complete an associate in applied science degree in computer science with an emphasis in computer system support. Stephen has also received the Outstanding Academic Achievement Certificate, the Computer Systems Support Mastery Certification, Network Pro Certification, and various Microsoft Office certifications obtained through Metro Tech. Whereas Stephen Keel is always building effective working relationships with city staff and is an invaluable asset to the Utilities Department. Whereas this council desires to recognize Stephen Keel for his dedication, professionalism, and commitment to the residents of the city of Oklahoma City. Now therefore be it resolved by the mayor and council of the city of Oklahoma City that they do hereby thank and commend Stephen Keel, March 2019 South Oklahoma City Kiwanis Club Employee of the Month.
Stephen, we have the best city employees in the country, and you are a great example. And we are so grateful for your service, and thank you for all you do. That was a great rundown, and I hope helps people understand how every one of our 4,700 city employees make this city operate and provide the services that people expect. Now, in my office, you told me you were a man of few words. You used fewer words than that to express that. But I would love for you to say anything at all, even just thank you.
Yeah, I want to thank all the people I work with and work for, a lot of very good people, so they make it easy to come in every day and do a good job. And thank you, Mayor, and the City Council for this honor.
Yeah, well, thank you. Let's see if we can go ahead and put some votes on the board. Does anybody want to make the motion? Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Thank you, Stephen. You're the Employee of the Month. That is yours to keep. Thank you again, Stephen. All right, why don't we bring up our Teacher of the Month, Kathleen Parker. Welcome, Kathleen. We are equally grateful for our amazing teachers in Oklahoma City, and we would love to learn a little bit more about you as well. So I would ask the clerk to read this resolution.
Whereas Kathleen Parker has been named Teacher of the Month for March 2019 by the Western Heights Public Schools and the Rotary Club of Oklahoma City. Whereas Kathleen is an outstanding graduate of the University of Central Oklahoma. Kathleen is in her 8th year of teaching. She began her career teaching English and Humanities in Putnam City schools. She then taught various English courses at the high school and middle school levels before joining the staff at Bridgestone Intermediate Center in Western Heights 4 years ago. Whereas at Bridgestone, Kathleen has been a leader in implementing the Success for All program. With Kathleen's thoughtful implementation, she not only holds each child individually accountable for their own work, but creates a framework to learn about community and collaborative work in a way which is invaluable to their futures in the workforce and in their communities. Whereas Kathleen is a part of a team of teachers in her building who are working on creating an English language arts curriculum for their school. They're working diligently on creating a framework that will allow new teachers to come in with a clear scope and sequence, common assessments, and a database of resources all aligned to standards. Kathleen initiated a new teacher supply drive to obtain supplies for first-year teachers. These supplies help to ease the financial burden while simultaneously making new teachers feel welcome and supported in their new school. Whereas Kathleen is deeply invested in the Western Heights community and has a heart for working with underprivileged youth, her desire is to instill in her students a love of reading. make students lifelong learners, inspire students to be people of character, and give them the ability to communicate so they are not at a disadvantage to pursue their dreams. Now therefore be it resolved by the Mayor and Council of the City of Oklahoma City that they do hereby recognize and commend Kathleen Parker on her selection as the March 2019 Teacher of the Month by Western Heights Public Schools and the Rotary Club of Oklahoma City.
Thank you. Well, obviously you are doing a lot, and it goes well beyond just teaching the students in your classroom. So thank you for that. And we visited a little bit of my office, and you're also, it's worth noting, a product of Putnam City Schools here in Northwest Oklahoma City. So you're a hometown person making good and passing it on to the next generation. So thank you for that. Would you like to say a few words?
Thank you so much, Mayor and City Council, for this incredible honor. It is truly humbling to be recognized for what I consider a blessing and a joy and a privilege to serve my school and my kids.
Well, thank you. We're very grateful for you. And let's show it by passing this resolution. How about that? Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you, Kathleen. We very much appreciate you and all the teachers of Oklahoma City. If I could ask Councilwoman Meg Salyer to join me down here. Meg and Councilman Shadid are down to their last couple meetings, and Meg reached out to me a few weeks ago with the desire to do some special honoring of others. Here, Meg, we're going to stand in front of the podium for you. We will, of course, have the opportunity at the next meeting to honor you, but you wanted to do a little bit of recognition yourself today. And so we're going to start with Brenda McDaniel, where's Brenda? She's a little, come on up here, Brenda. Brenda, please join us here, and we have a citation that I would ask the clerk to read.
Whereas Brenda Sue McDaniel was born to Edna Lena and Johnny Bokelman in Slapout, Oklahoma, and educated at Laverne High School, Northwestern Oklahoma State University, and the University of Oklahoma. Whereas Brenda Sue has been married to Tom J. McDaniel for 60 years. Whereas she has worked as a second grade teacher, a special education teacher, a real estate agent, an alumni director, the First Lady of Northwestern State University, and the First Lady for Oklahoma City University. Whereas she has volunteered as Alva PTA president, a Cub Scout leader, a Boy Scout leader, an AAU track coach, high school booster club president, and served on the board of directors for the Nescatunga Arts Festival, the Oklahoma Arts Council, Allied Arts, and the Oklahoma City Civic Center. Whereas she is a woman of the highest character, whose standards are beyond reproach, whose charm embraces all, and whose influence creates a positive force within her family as well as in her community. Whereas Brenda Sue has raised 3 children, an energy attorney that co-founded the nonprofit Cleats for Kids, providing 20,000 shoes to underserved Oklahoman youth each year, a financial advisor that has served as an Oklahoma State representative and Oklahoma State treasurer, and a filmmaker who is executive director of Oklahoma's largest film festival, and as a nonprofit was named Outstanding Arts and Cultural Nonprofit of Oklahoma in 2018. She is the mother-in-law to an award-winning nonprofit leader and to a nurse practitioner, and is grandmother to 5 outstanding grandchildren. Whereas Brenda Sue is truly an extraordinary mother who embodies inspirational qualities, patience, cheerfulness, affection, kindness, and understanding. Whereas Brenda Sue has been named by the National Association of American Mothers, Inc. as the 2019 Oklahoma State Mother of the Year, and will be traveling to Washington, D.C. to represent the state of Oklahoma as a candidate for National Mother of the Year. Now, therefore, David Holt and Councilwoman Meg Salyer congratulate and commend Brenda Sue McDaniel on her selection as 2019 Oklahoma State Mother of the Year and her many years of dedicated service for the betterment of the city of Oklahoma City.
Yeah, let's hear it from Brenda McDaniel. Councilwoman Salyer.
Well, really, David, thank you so much. Brenda, we're so proud of you. As I begin to wind down, and it's coming really quickly, one meeting to go, not that I'm counting, but one meeting to go. I've really had the opportunity to reflect on people that got me to where I am and led me to this journey. And your support and Tom's support over these 10 years has meant so much, and we are so proud of you to receive this honor. Leela Sullivan is here with us today. Leela, where are you? She's back here. Leela's daughter, Connell, was a Mother of the Year, and she actually is representing us and the Mother of the Year organization at the United Nations today to talk about the importance and the value of strong motherhood. And so we really appreciate you being here. We're so happy to honor you this way.
Thank you, Mayor Holt and members of the City Council. Meg, I really appreciate this. This is one of the greatest things that's ever been to represent mothers. And what can you say that's more fun than being a mother and hearing your children call you mother? Leela is on the national board for the American Mothers, and sitting by her is Shelley Solis, who is the 2009 Oklahoma Mother of the Year. My husband, Tom, who's just a doll and works every day on Maps 3, and my oldest son, Mark, and his wife, Stacy. Wave so they'll know who you are. And Brenda McDaniel, and my youngest son, Lance, is out of town on business. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Let's hear it for Brenda one more time. Councilwoman Salyer, would you like to call forward your next honoree?
I would. Could Randy Floyd please come forward? I'm hoping above hope that this is at least a bit of a surprise. There we go. I think all your friends here probably tricked you.
Well, good morning, Randy. Welcome. If the clerk would read, we have a citation in your honor that was directed and produced by Councilwoman Salyer.
Whereas Randy Lynn Floyd was born in Shawnee, Oklahoma, into a family with close ties to the Oklahoma oil industry. Moved with her family to Venezuela for a 2-year period, then to Woodward, Oklahoma, and then settled in Oklahoma City in 1963. She graduated from the University of Oklahoma with a Bachelor of Architecture degree on May 11, 1985, received her license to practice architecture in Oklahoma on October 1st of 1991, and has subsequently mentored and inspired many other women to excel in the practice of architecture. Whereas she has received numerous awards for the projects she has designed and constructed, including private residences, commercial and healthcare buildings, and a stunning addition at the west entrance of the Oklahoma State Capitol building. Whereas she served on numerous Oklahoma City commissions, study groups, and committees, including 11 years of service on the Oklahoma City Historic Preservation Commission, and most recently served on the board of Positively Paseo. She joined with her fellow citizens in efforts to preserve and protect the threatened architectural heritage of Oklahoma City, including the Gold Dome Citizens Bank Building, the downtown YMCA building, and the Center Theater building. Whereas she was instrumental in preventing the replacement of the historically significant Walnut Avenue Viaduct with an at-grade street and railroad crossing, and was installed by the Oklahoma City Council as the design review authority for oversight of the successful construction of a historically authentic replacement for this important component of Oklahoma City's rich architectural history. Whereas in 1999, she took up the mantle of urban pioneer in Oklahoma City's historic cottage district of Midtown, where she purchased and restored 2 historic territorial-style residential structures, which subsequently spurred the ongoing revitalization and redevelopment of this dynamic neighborhood. Whereas she has proven herself to be a role model for citizens deserving to assert a positive impact on their home city through community service. Now, therefore, David Holt, the mayor, and Councilwoman Meg Salyer thank and commend Randy Lynn Floyd for her exceptional public service and dedication to preserving Oklahoma City's architectural past and future.
Let's hear it for Randy.
Come over here. Come over here. So I think it's particularly poignant that we would be able to do this today with so many people here concerned about the church at 36 and Walker. And as I said, I've been reflecting a lot on the last 10 and a half years and how I was led here. And part of that was holding a picket sign in front of the Gold Dome, and part of it was listening to stories about trying to save the Center Theater, which you all enjoy every day today when you go to the Museum of Art and go see the movies in the theater, and the unbelievable strategy to figure out how to save the Walnut Bridge after it looked like it was completely lost. And for those of you that don't know part of that story, it was by discovering that the Corporation Commission had authority over diminishing the safety of the crossing. Because it's a bridge, it is safer than if it was an at-grade crossing, and they were the ones that ultimately had to decide whether or not the bridge could come down, and they decided it couldn't. So we would not have these things were it not for many people in this room. Michael Smith, I need to recognize you as well. Randy's husband, Michael, has been by her side all the way along, but this is just such an important part of Oklahoma City's history, and we have an opportunity today to further the betterment of our community by saving some of these important structures.
I would just say that over my career, the most important work I did was my preservation work. And, excuse me, I'm really moved. I almost feel like I'm at my funeral. Not, okay. All right. Anyway, I think my preservation work was the most important and the most rewarding. There were so many friends I made helping to save old buildings. It's just, and many of them are here today, and I thank you for being here. And I just would like to encourage anyone whose heart is moved to save an old structure. Do it. You know, you're going to make some enemies, but you're going to make some friends as well. So anyway, I think it is really interesting that today we're hearing about the first Christian church here. And I hope people just stand strong and get what they want out of that. Thank you, Meg, so much. You're so welcome. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Randy. Thank you. Let's hear it for Randy. Councilwoman Salyer, would you like to bring up the last contestant on This Is Your Life?
This sounds like Let's Make a Deal or one of those shows. Could I please ask my friend Bill Bleakley to come forward?
All right, Bill Bleakley, let's learn a little bit more about you. If the clerk would read a citation.
Whereas Bill Bleakley grew up in Bethany, Oklahoma, and attended the University of Oklahoma on a ROTC scholarship, graduating with a degree in political science. Whereas he served in the Navy during the Vietnam War and began his journalism career by moonlighting as night editor and columnist for the Guam Daily News. Whereas after his naval service, Bill graduated from the University of Oklahoma Law School, and in 1972 he bought a home in Crown Heights and became immersed in neighborhood conservation and preservation by organizing the first Crown Heights Edgemere Heights Neighborhood Association, serving as its first president. Whereas in 1973, Bill led the effort to create the Crown Heights Preservation District, making it the fourth preservation district in Oklahoma City, joining Heritage Hills, Putnam Heights, and Lincoln Terrace. He was appointed to the Oklahoma City Historic Preservation Commission by Mayor Patience Latting that same year. As a practicing lawyer, Bill formed the Center for Education Law and served many Oklahoma school districts and provided legal assistance for the formation of some of Oklahoma City's first school foundations, including Oklahoma City, Putnam City, and Millwood. And he represented the Oklahoma City School District in the creation of its first charter and enterprise schools. Whereas during his tenure as counsel for the Oklahoma City School District, Bill, together with Ron Bogle, Bruce Day, and Patrick McGugan, created and developed the Maps for Kids program and played a critical role in conceptualizing and implementing its intricate legal elements. Whereas Bill's love of journalism came back into play in 1979 with the birth of his newspaper, the Oklahoma Gazette, which started out as a monthly neighborhood conservation newsletter, and when it sold in 2018, was and continues to be the largest locally owned newspaper in the state of Oklahoma. For his contributions to the state of journalism in Oklahoma, Bill was elected to the Oklahoma Journalism Hall of Fame in 2008. Whereas Bill's passion for historic preservation led to his complete restoration of the Manny House at Northwest 11th and Chartel, which housed his law practice and where he dabbled in the restaurant business with La Cavo and the Newport. Whereas Bill continues to be a force in neighborhood activism by organizing the first neighborhood association in the emerging Sosa residential district near downtown Oklahoma City, and he is currently acting as its president. Now, therefore, Mayor David Holt and Councilwoman Meg Salyer thank and commend Bill Bleakley for his contributions to our city's culture and journalism and his passionate activism for public education and the preservation of Oklahoma City's historical neighborhoods.
Let's hear it for Bill Bleakley. What a life.
Thanks, David. So, Bill, over the 10 years you've been helping guide me through this adventure that I've been on, I have certainly learned that strong neighborhoods are what make a great city. And from the very beginning of our friendship, I have known that you were one of the greatest champions for neighborhoods and for historic preservation and for our kids. And for all of you that remember, wouldn't you just love to go to the Newport for lunch today? My gosh, it was fun and a wonderful place. But you have been so important to me and so important to Oklahoma City, and we wanted to take this opportunity to recognize the really important milestones. Maps for Kids just sort of glided by in that, but think of the change that's occurred in this community because of the city's efforts in the school district, where we really don't have a lot of opportunity to participate, but the creativity of Maps for Kids was an area where we really could. So thank you for being here today. I know it wasn't a complete surprise, but we tried hard. So please say a few words.
Thank you, Meg. Thank you, Mayor Holt, and hopefully thank you, Council. For this honor. It is truly humbling and is much appreciated. I'd like to recognize some family members here with me today. My wife, Linda Mioli, who's been with me on the journey, my son, Chad, my granddaughter, Kendall, and I think my grandson, Alex, is down at OU studying hard, we hope. And the mother of my grandchildren, Amanda Bleakley. Thank you for being here. Quickly, my four passions expressed in the citation: neighborhood conservation and historic preservation, journalism, and education are my passions. Some people say I seem to lack a little focus in what I do, but I have great love for this city, and all of these elements are so important to it. I encourage everyone to get involved and support the efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. That's yours to keep. Thank you so much. All right, well, that concludes our Office of the Mayor items. Sometimes people leave during this period as I make my way back to the horseshoe. You are more than welcome to do so, but you're also more than welcome to stay. Thank you. All right. We are back, and we will begin here now at item 4 on your agenda, Journal of Council Proceedings. We have items A and B. We can take them with one motion. Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. We have item 5, request for uncontested continuances. There is an item listed here, 9C2, that will be struck, and anything else that the city manager brings forward.
Yeah, on page 24 under dilapidated structures, item 9J1, item D, 1001 Northwest 44th Street, we're going to strike to re-notify the owner. Item E, 616 Southeast 47th Street, we will strike also to re-notify the owner. On page 24, under item 9K1 on unsecured structures, we have item H, 1200 North Robinson Avenue, strike the owner is secured, and we'll strike all of these items. On item I, 1316 Northwest 2nd Street, the owner is secured. Item J, 1317 Northwest 2nd Street, the owner is secured. Item K, 2325 Northwest 19th Street, the owner is secured. And then item M, 2413 Southwest 24th Street, to re-notify the owner. Item N, 1137 Northwest 26th Street, the owner is secured. Item O, 2100 Northwest 27th Street, the owner is secured. Item P, 223 Southeast 44th Street, the owner is secured. And item Q, 2516 Southeast 47th, the owner is secured. On page 25, under abandoned buildings, item 9L1, item F, 1200 North Robinson, we're asking to strike all of these also. Item F, 1200 North Robinson Avenue, the owner is secured. Item G, 1316 Northwest 2nd Street, the owner is secured. Item H, 1317 Northwest 2nd, the owner is secured. Item J, 2413 Southwest 24th Street, to re-notify the owner. Item K, 1137 Southwest or Northwest 26th Street, the owner has secured. Item M, 223 Southeast 44th Street, the owner has secured. Item N, 616 Southeast 47th, to re-notify the owner. And item O, 2516 Southeast 47th Street, the owner has secured. And that is all the items I have.
All right, thank you. That brings us to item 6, revocable permits. We have item A, revocable permit with the Parkinson's Foundation for the Parkinson's Foundation Rally Walk and 5K on May 5th. Councilwoman Salyer.
Yes, has anyone signed up to speak about this? There we go. We do have
Yes,
someone.
we have Bruce McIntyre.
Morning, Bruce.
Hi, my name is Bruce McIntyre, 1912 Northwest 172nd Street. I'm the executive director of the Parkinson Foundation of Oklahoma. This event would be the 9th year that we've had the Parkinson's Rally Walk and 5K. The event's scheduled for May 5th, and it's relatively simple. We don't close any streets, sell any liquor, or sell anything other than fundraising. But it does fuel our mission to inspire hope and transform life for Parkinson patients and families in Oklahoma, primarily through support, education, and effective therapy and exercise.
We look forward to the event. I would move approval.
Thank you.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Have a great event, Bruce. All right, that brings us to item 6B. This is a revocable right-of-way use permit with Energy FC to hold the O-City St. Patrick's Day Parade on March 16th. Councilwoman Salyer.
It looks like there's been a resurgence of St. Patrick's Day parades in town.
We have
Good morning.
Billy Walton.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Thank you for your time. I'm Billy Walton with Energy FC, here to talk to you about the O-City Parade. It'll be March 16th, this Saturday morning. We'll kick off at 10 a.m. On the corner of Reno and Hudson, and we'll go a little bit west over to Walker and just head straight up Walker North to 9th Street, where we'll disband. But it'll be a great event, family-friendly. Everything will be an amazing time, just a nice little rolling street closure that'll keep everything moving, and then on to the Energy FC game that night. So it's just a way to get everybody together in green, which is one of our favorite colors, and to have a good time that
Noted that in your shirts.
Yes, ma'am. I came prepared.
Move approval of the event.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Item 6C, revocable right-of-way use permit with Market Festival on Paseo to hold Market Festival on Paseo on May 25th. Councilman Shadid. We have no one who has signed up. but they are here anyways. Great.
Good morning, esteemed Mayor and City Council. I represent the estate of John Jacobson and its Special Administrator, Michelle Jacobson Clark. And I am Robert Lee Clark, CPA. Michelle completed her master's in 2014 as an exemplary OCU grad with a background in public relations and business. And I, on the other hand, am just a run-of-the-mill CPA, but I learned from the best. He's right there. To give you some background, John Jacobson and his wife Kathy acquired some property in Paseo in 2000, which consisted of a building, underlying land, and a parking lot. Prior to their acquisition, the building was home to an El Chorrito restaurant. So if you lived and worked in the area or downtown or even were on the zoo audit, you could have lunch there. It was very convenient. They repurposed the facility and began Kathy's on Paseo, which was a ladies' clothing store. And they ran that together for around 15 years. After clearing some hurdles, they began what was known as Kathy's Market Festival, which they ran together through 2015 until Kathy passed away. And then in 2017, John's daughter, parenthetically my wife Michelle, and I worked the festival with John. And little did we know that we would lose John that October. But what we learned in 2017 allowed us to do the festival turnkey in 2018. We didn't have access to all the files and information, so we reconstructed the festival, which essentially was a large Excel spreadsheet, and we had a successful turnout. The festival enjoys around 60,000 people, 60,000 plus attendees, and if they drop 75 each, that's 4.5 mil if they all report their sales. So today we're here asking for you to approve our request for a permit to have the upcoming 2019 Memorial Day Market Festival on Paseo, which is May 25th, 6th, and 7th, from 10 a.m., 6 p.m. every day. And if successful today, you're all invited to come have some food, beverage, buy some jewelry, art, collectibles, apparel, you name it, we have it. And the subject property, for your information, is the northeast corner of Dewey Avenue and Northwest 28th, that triangle-shaped tract, which has the Paseo Grill in our building, and then the property just south, the concrete parking lot, which is the southeast corner of 28th and Dewey, and that also has our vendors. We have approximately 120 vendors expected for this upcoming festival. So today we ask for your approval for our permit.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. You're all invited. We'll see you there.
Okay, now we are at item 6D. This is a revocable right-of-way use permit with the Oklahoma City County Health Department to hold Open Streets OKC on April 7th. This edition will be on Northwest 23rd between Robinson and Western, and this involves both wards 2 and 6. And I believe Billy Walton is back.
Couldn't get rid of me. We're here for OKC Open Streets. I believe this is our 9th overall when you count the Uptown 23rd and the South Side edition. This will be our spring event on April 7th. It's an amazing event. It's truly fun to see the city come together all on one street that we close down and promote health and wellness and getting out and enjoying this lovely weather we, fingers crossed, will have on April 7th. So it's just a fun event for the city to enjoy on Uptown 23rd.
Okay, great.
We really appreciate City County Health doing this. I know there are an awful lot of partners involved.
Yes, there are.
Challenge to corral everybody, but it is a great event.
It's a fun challenge. It's all worth it once we see everybody having a great time that day.
Absolutely. I'd move approval.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Item 6E, this is a revocable right-of-way use permit with Stockyard City Main Street to hold the Stockyard City St. Patrick's Day Parade on March 16th on Exchange. Councilwoman Salyer? We do have Kelly Payne has signed up.
We have Kelly to talk to us about the Stockyards Parade. Good morning, Kelly.
Good morning. This is our second year for our Stockyards City St. Patrick's Day Parade, and we hold that in conjunction with the Oklahoma Irish Heritage Association. It was a lot of fun last year to meld our Western heritage and our Irish heritage together. It's a real treat for everyone in the family. This year we have about 45 entries, everything from our wonderful Longhorns that we love to parade down the street to Irish dancers. So we're just excited to have all that great community environment going on in Stockyard City. And Mr. Mayor, I'll assure you there will be no cows tipped in Stockyard City.
Of course not. It's a city. Yes, thank you.
It really is a great event. For anybody that hasn't been, do come down to see the Longhorns parading literally down the street in Stockyards is just a great sight to behold. So I encourage everybody to come down. And my add-on is that also March 16th is opening day at the Boathouse Foundation, and I understand we're going to have a green river, or we're going to have some green water down there.
Okay.
So it's going to be a really fun day. Please join us in the Stockyards. I would move approval.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously.
Thank you all.
Have a great event. Thank you. And finally, 6F, revocable right-of-way use permit with Ultramax Sports to hold the Go Girl Run 5K and half marathon on March 23rd on Ron Norick. This involves wards 2, 6, and 7. I don't know that we've had anyone sign up to speak, and Councilwoman Nice, you haven't gotten to do one of these yet, so how about you take that?
And since I'm a girl, that's the reason why. I would definitely move approval for any Go Girl Run 5K and half marathon that's going to take place.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. All right, we will now recess our council meeting to convene as the Oklahoma City Municipal Facilities Authority. There we have items A through H, and we can take it with one motion. Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. We will adjourn OCMFA, convene as the Oklahoma City Public Property Authority. All we have there today is claims and payroll. It's debatable whether we need a vote or not, but we'll do it just for good measure. So I'd entertain a motion. Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. We'll adjourn OCPPA, convene as the Oklahoma City Environmental Assistance Trust, where again, we also just have claims and payroll, but I'll entertain a motion. Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. We'll adjourn the Oklahoma City Environmental Assistance Trust and reconvene as the council, where we find ourselves on page 6 of your printed agenda, item 7, the consent docket. Oh, very good. Is there anything that anybody wants to pull out or talk about?
Item 7M.
N as in Nancy? Okay, M as in Mark. Very good.
And Mayor, 7L.
Okay.
Seven N as in Nancy, 1.
Okay.
AQ.
AQ.
Seven AO.
AO.
1.
Wait, what'd you say? I'm sorry?
7 AO 1.
1. Got it.
And 2.
And 2. Okay. Okay. Anything else? All right, we'll take them in order then. So that means we will start with 7L, Park Installation and Maintenance Agreement. Councilwoman Salyer.
Thank you, Mayor. I did just want to mention this. This year, the Oklahoma City Community Foundation is celebrating its 50th anniversary. And there are lots of things planned for this, but one is an installation, this is an installation and maintenance agreement with the Oklahoma City Community Foundation to, on a temporary basis, install something called the Musical Swings. And it's a project created by Daily Tous les Jours, which to me sounds like Daily Daily. It was kind of a strange name. This will be out here in Bicentennial Park, and it is an interactive piece of art that as you go on the swings, it creates music, sounds. So I don't think, I learned this morning, we're not going to be able to, like the piano that you step on, I don't think we're going to be able to make a song, but it will create sounds and music. And I think will be a wonderful opportunity for people to come down here to Bicentennial Park. So thank you to the Oklahoma City Community Foundation for this gift.
Very cool. And as I understood this morning, there are exactly 9 swings. So photo op, guys.
Yeah, oh, there you go.
All right, 7M, resolution authorizing negotiation of a contract with White and Smith. Councilman Stonecipher.
Thank you, Your Honor. This is a resolution authorizing the negotiation of a contract. It's a contract for work to align the city's development regulations with the comprehensive plans, goals, and policies. I received numerous phone calls and several emails with some concerns about the negotiation of this contract, the terms of this contract, and so I would like to move to defer this to the next council meeting where I can have some more time to talk to the people that picked up the phone and called me.
So we've got another motion on the table right now. So what you're asking at this point is to pull this out and
Yes.
have a separate
Yes.
vote. Okay, well, we'll pull it out.
Better than I did. Thank you.
We'll pull it out and then we'll deal with your motion. So the motion previously made to approve the consent docket now exempts item 7M. Okay, 7N, Councilman Stone, final plans and specifications. This is specifically 7N1.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to see if we could get an update on what type of improvements these are on the Southern Oaks Park.
Yeah, Eric is here to provide that update.
Thank you, Mr. Councilman. This item today is actually it's work at the Southern Oaks Park, and what's included is walks, paths, benches, and landscaping. The budget's $250,000. The bids will be received on April 3rd, and it's all work that would be completed this calendar year. So upon bid receipt and award of a successful contractor, work can potentially begin as early as April and be finished by fall of 19.
Excellent. Thanks, Eric.
Okay. Moving on to page 15, 7A01. These were resolutions approving change orders, and I believe Councilman Stone, you wanted to talk about A01 and A02, which, as it turns out, are probably in Ward 4, not Ward 7.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to point out that Lake Draper still is in Ward 4. Hasn't moved overnight. And I was hoping we could find out an update on the trails, time to completion.
Good morning. Yes, the Draper Trail is well under construction. Remember that it's in 3 different projects. So we have 3 separate projects going on out there. The first one is the western side of the lake. That one is about 90% done, 95%. They're doing some final things if the weather will allow them to work on that. The east project is about 70% completed, and the north section is about 50% completed. So we're hoping early summer we'll be able to open the whole 13 miles around the lake. We're ready to get that open.
Early summer, is that, you don't want to give me a specific date?
I don't, because I don't know how much it's going to rain this week. That continues to push that schedule around. I'm hoping and shooting for end of May.
Understood. Yeah, hopefully we don't have too wet of a spring, so thanks, David.
Okay.
David, excuse me, but before you leave, so the parts that are completed, like the western edge, can people begin using that and run
No,
on it?
it's not completed yet. They're still doing some touch-up things, putting some sod on. The problem with that is you would get to one end and you wouldn't have any place to go, because that is a complete loop. So I'd encourage people not to get out there just yet, but be a little more patient, and we'll have it all done.
Yeah, and you may not be prepared to speak on this, but you know, there's an overall plan to connect all of these various trails at some point. Can you talk about how this will be connected to the west of Draper, particularly going through Ward 5?
Well, that's one of the things that the advisory board, or the subcommittee, the Trails and Sidewalks Subcommittee, has looked at. They have some extra money within their projects, and they've asked us to look at doing some of those connections to connect the whole system. So hopefully soon we'll be able to do some of those connections.
And I promised not to use any references to stepchildren with red hair, but you know, there's been a void of any activity or projects out in Ward 5, so we would like to see some activity at some point.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to item 7AQ, resolution approving allocation of approximately $3 million from the MAPS 3 fund to the modern streetcar project. Councilman Greiner.
I was only going to say what you just said and then ask to have it voted on separately.
Okay, great. All right, we can pull it out for a separate vote. So the previous motion to approve these items now no longer applies to item 7AQ as well as 7M. And we will handle that separately. Okay, that was all the things that anybody had brought up. Is there anything else?
Yes.
Councilwoman Nice?
Can I bring up item 7O?
Okay.
And just want to make mention of at the Softball Association of America with the softball complex. Of course, phase 1 and 2 has been completed, but we're looking forward to phase 3 and 4 because upon completion of phase 3 and 4, we will be able to continue the contract and extend it for the Women's College World Series in Oklahoma City through 2035. So I think that's worth being noted for those updates for that softball stadium.
Yes. Awesome project, awesome event that we have here in the Adventure District. Anybody else? Anything else? Okay. Well, we have a motion on the table to approve all of the consent doc items except for 7M and AQ. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Now we'll return Councilman Stonecipher. I believe you wanted to make a motion regarding 7M.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. I want to move that 7M be deferred until our next meeting, which I think is March 26th.
Okay, we've got a motion to defer that item and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. And then would someone like to make a motion on 7AQ?
Second.
Got a motion and a second to approve item 7AQ. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes 8-1. All right, that brings us to the concurrence docket on page 17 of your printed agenda. Item 8A through O.
Item B.
B, okay.
As in boy.
Anyone else? Okay. Councilman Stone, we'll start there.
Yeah, item B is on some improvements being made out at the Draper Marina. I was hoping we could hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, Chris Browning is here, our Utilities Director, to speak to those improvements.
Good morning. The Draper Marina paving project has two intended purposes. First, we have some deteriorated paving around the concession area and the playground, so we're going to repair that, replace that, resurface it. And then secondly, during the high lake use periods of the year, we have some overflow from the parking lot into kind of a makeshift area, and then there's a gravel road that goes back around to the West Stanley Draper Drive. That's actually 104th Street. Those areas create a fair amount of erosion into the lake, and so for water quality improvement reasons, we're going to add 58 parking places just to the southwest of the existing parking lot, and then pave the road all the way, pave 104th all the way over to West Stanley Draper Drive. That'll also tie in nicely with the new trail in there as well. So,
thank you. Okay, any further discussion? We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on any of the concurrence docket items? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. That brings us to page 20, items 9, items requiring separate votes. We can begin with item 9A1. This is an ordinance on final hearing that was recommended for approval. This is at 2910 South Blackwelder Avenue, moving from R2 to Neighborhood Business District. This was deferred from February 26th. Councilwoman Salyer.
Is the applicant here? Okay, did you have something you wanted to say?
Pardon me?
Did you want to speak to the matter?
Yeah, briefly.
Please, I would appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we need your name and address for the
Yeah,
record.
Tom Cooper. I'm an attorney here in Oklahoma City, 119 North Robbins.
And you're representing the applicant?
I am.
Okay.
I am. And the applicant is here. This was already approved by the Planning Commission unanimously without objection in January. And just a little context here, and again, this is 29th and Blackwelder area, south Blackwelder. The applicant, Ali Daimi, owns other businesses in the area. He has an insurance agency. He has a tag agency right across the street from the area we're talking about. So he's completely vested in this area of the city and does not take this lightly. And from what I can tell by looking at the file, he's met all the requirements. It's been unanimously approved by the Planning Commission. The only objection we've received that I can tell is from, by the way, the use is going to be for a self-service ice machine, the big deals that we've all seen around. The only objection we've drawn, not surprisingly, is from the only other person or company who would be selling ice, which is 7-Eleven, which would be right next door. 7-Eleven, I think there's a letter in the file objecting to this, saying it would be a nuisance. I think the burden is on 7-Eleven to show that there would be a nuisance associated with this. They don't offer any empirical evidence. I don't think there is any evidence of these ice machines creating a nuisance. So I just looking at the file, and I just got into this recently, I don't really see a reason to not approve this, especially since it was unanimously recommended by the Planning Commission.
It's sort of an unusual location for a self-service ice machine. I couldn't quite figure out who's going to use that machine. And I am curious what the plan is for security.
For security, yeah, and I don't know that, but I think probably the applicant, if you let him address that issue, I think you could do that. Ali?
Good morning. My name is Ali Daimi. As far as security goes, the whole area would be fenced with 8 feet privacy fence.
Okay, so it sits sort of in a neighborhood.
Yes, ma'am.
And you're going to fence the property? Will you have lighting and cameras? And
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. The whole area would be camera system would be installed. I own the property adjacent to it as well.
You own the next door property?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And who do you anticipate your customer is? I mean, is it?
There would be residents of that neighborhood, the area. That would be totally is going to be different. Clientele that is going to be buying bulk ice versus of buying a cup of ice or whatever.
Okay.
So
I did go drive it and check the site, and I want to be sure that it doesn't become, as the letter said, a congregation point for people to hang out. If you own the property next door,
yes,
that'll leave some of my
yes, ma'am.
concerns.
Already, like I said, I'm waiting for the approval that I can go ahead, and pour the concrete and fence it. I already got bid for the fencing, $8,000 I'm going to invest to just fence the area.
Okay. There were no protests at the Planning Commission. I would move approval.
Second. And Meg, just to provide some more background, so there's a similar facility on Southwest 43rd and South Walker, does great, amount of work and business, and I've never seen any problems. I go by it quite often. I go by this area quite often too. And people that work in construction, they'll leave from their house and fill up with ice for the whole day. So it's mainly workers.
It is catty-cornered to Heronville School.
Right.
Right there on McKinley, but.
Right. Yeah. I don't think it'd create any problems. Really, it's designed to allow people who work outdoors and need access to ice water to have a good supply of ice for their needs.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we have a motion and a second? Yes. All right. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, item 9A2. This is at 2232 South Missouri Avenue, going from R1 to I2. Councilwoman Nice.
Yes, do we have anyone to speak? I know this is to permit industrial development, and we had not one protester, so I would move for approval.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item 9A3 at 705 Southeast 79th Street, going from R1 to I1. Councilman Stone.
Thank you, Mayor. Has anyone signed up to speak?
The applicant.
Yes, Terry Stevens, available to answer questions.
Is Terry here? Oh, okay. Come on up. Would you like to tell us a little bit about your project?
We really don't have a project planned, but that particular property is just, there's residential, about 4 or 5 houses there, and the rest is completely surrounded by light industrial and commercial property, so we would just like to get it resolved.
Okay. I would go ahead and recommend this for approval.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Item 9A4 at 1949 Southeast 44th, moving from R1 to I2. Councilwoman Nice and Terry has signed up to speak on that item as well.
Okay. And that is already a commercial property, and we've just been grandfathered in, so we're just getting it updated as it needs to be.
And also seeing no protesters for this, so I'll ask that we move approval.
All right, got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Item 9B, this is an ordinance on final hearing. It is at 9700 Northwest Expressway, moving from R1 to PUD 1694. This was deferred from February 12th. It has received 100% protest. I'm told that's somewhat historic. And Councilman Greiner, you have the floor.
Yeah, this is a PUD that's been kind of in the works for a while, and it came to us from the Planning Commission with no recommendation. It was voted on, I think, 4-4, and so it was obviously split. One person either wasn't there or recused themselves. And now the applicant is revising the site plan, splitting it up into 2 tracks, adding uses to it, and so it's my desire to refer it back to the Planning Commission to get their new view on it. And, you know, as far as me, I don't like delaying the process more than anybody. And so for me to refer something back to the Planning Commission, I think is somewhat historic also, with 100% along with the 100% protest. But I know that there are 2 protesters who have signed up, and so we can hear from them because they disagree with me and want to vote on it now. So
Okay.
we can hear from them now.
Is it Dennis? Yes. Okay. Please come forward, state your name and address. Oh, okay. Kelly was also signed up. Go ahead, Kelly.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. My name is Kelly Work, and I'm an attorney here representing the D&J Management Company and Dennis and Jacqueline Trepanier. They own the 14 acres that are immediately adjacent to the east of the subject property, and we are here, and we do oppose and ask you not to remand this item back to the Planning Commission. We request that the case proceed to hearing and that the council make a decision on the PUD application that is before you. There also are a number of people here in opposition to the requested postponement and to the PUD, and I just want to identify them as well. And they may not choose to speak, but I just wanted to make you aware that they're present. In addition to the Trepaniers, Sheridan Wright is present. She owns property on the north side of the Northwest Expressway. Debbie Lowry is present. She owns property immediately to the south, adjacent from the subject property. Michael Trepanier is here on behalf of D&J Management, as I mentioned, which is directly to the east. Jason Sanders is here representing the Gillespie properties that are on the north side of the Northwest Expressway. And then Colin McCormick is an attorney representing Naomi Properties, and they own property also that is directly across from the subject property on the north side of the Northwest Expressway. And as has been mentioned, there is a 100% legal protest to this PUD application. The application was previously continued from the February 12th council agenda at the applicant's request, and the process actually began in July of last year when the application was filed. The notice of hearing for this application actually identified the project as a technology park. That was how people were notified, the surrounding property owners. Notice went out, I think, to all of the property owners within 800 feet of the subject property. And it was only by requesting a copy of the design statement from the staff did we learn that the actual project that is proposed for this property is a conventional 192-unit, 3-story apartment complex. There is no technology park. There are no technology uses that are proposed. But you wouldn't know that from reading the notice that was sent out by the city. It referred to it as a proposed technology park. So the notice that went out was entirely misleading, and it was only after the neighbors began communicating with each other that they came to learn what actually was being proposed for this property. And just to give you a little bit of the background, the application was on the Planning Commission agenda 5 separate times over the course of the summer and into the fall. There were 2 full, complete hearings to a vote before the Planning Commission, one in November and then again in December. And at neither of those Planning Commission hearings was the applicant able to secure a majority recommending approval of the application. And as Councilman Greiner mentioned, the Planning Commission was split 4-4 after the conclusion of the second hearing that we had on the application. And then the Planning Commission unanimously made a determination to recommend that the item go forward to the City Council without a recommendation from the Commission. We first learned of this proposal to refer the item back to the Planning Commission just on Friday last week. We were not consulted about it. We were not asked for our opinion about it. We've been just preparing after the application was continued from the prior setting before the council in February to prepare for this hearing today. And in our view, this suggestion to remand the item back to the Planning Commission is simply an effort to frustrate and wear down the opposition after these 7 months of hearings and process, and there is no real substantive change that is contemplated to the application. In our view, it is unreasonable and unfair to require the surrounding property owners to essentially start the process over by sending this case back to the Planning Commission with this late and last-ditch effort. We have participated in the process and have respected the process. In our view, the only party that will benefit by a remand back to the Planning Commission is the applicant. It will just result in further cost and time and energy and effort on behalf of the surrounding property owners. We ask that you not send the application back to the Planning Commission. That will result in just further delay, and that you instead, we ask that you hear the application today and that you vote to deny this requested rezoning to permit a apartment complex that would be the sole use. Thank you very much, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of what Kelly just said, but the one thing that we do disagree on is whether or not there have been substantive changes to the site plan. And I think there are enough substantive changes to where the Planning Commission should see it again, and he disagrees. But so with that, I'll move to refer this PUD back to the Planning Commission.
One question before we vote. When it's referred back, will there still just be 8 people voting or 9 people?
David Box, 522 Call Court, on behalf of the applicant. There were still at most only be 8. But at the Planning Commission the first time, Mr. Work misspoke. It was actually 4-3. There was one person absent. The chair had to recuse. So majority of the people present and voting actually voted in favor of the project. So at most you could have would be 8 because the chair of the Planning Commission is married to Mr. Work. So she will have to recuse. But there are substantive changes to the site plan consistent with what we believe we heard at the neighborhood meeting. Additionally, I was just hired a matter of weeks ago. We asked that it be deferred the first time to go have a neighborhood meeting. One of the concerns that was raised at the neighborhood meeting is that it would just be an apartment complex. So we went back to the drawing board, reworked the site plan to provide for commercial development along the frontage of Northwest Highway, which is what we thought we heard was one of the concerns. So we believe we've got an application now that perhaps is more in keeping with what the neighbors want. It is also worth noting, this council routinely sees staff reports, and you will note that there are always technical evaluations the staff has put in to ask the applicant to do things that might bring it more into conformance with the comprehensive plan. It's worth noting that here staff recommends approval, and it's so in line with the comprehensive plan, there are no technical evaluations whatsoever.
I think the number of planning commissioners that are going to be voting on it is somewhat of a moot point. I want to move it back to the planning commission because I think that debates like this that's where they should have happened. And I'm not sure that they really did happen at the planning commission.
James, how did the notice go out?
There weren't a lot of back and forth of figuring out how to make it work or what the protesters are really wanting and all of that. So there's more to it than just another vote.
How did the notice go out that said it was a technology center?
The notice went out like the notice goes out in every single zoning case. Because it's a SPUD or a PUD, it has the base zoning district. If you recall the discussion a couple weeks ago about the medical marijuana dispensary, the same complaint was raised there because there the base was 02, and so the notice when it goes out, it basically says that it was going to be an office PUD. Here, it's at a technology park PUD because it is the base zoning district of Technology Park, and it's simply modified through the PUD by detracting uses that would otherwise be permitted. That's the same manner of every single zoning case that comes before the City Council every Tuesday.
It's an apartment complex. We don't have a base zoning for apartment.
That is a permitted use within the PUD, but the base zoning district is Technology Park. And the notice directs you to, if there are questions, you can go online. They're all available online, or you can call staff and get a copy.
I agree, Meg. It doesn't make any sense. I don't think it should have said technology.
Can people basically choose any base zoning they want, and then as a part of the PUD make any use they want? And is that a way to try to hide something?
Well, in this case, the base zoning is Technology Park, and one of the uses is apartment complex. But there's also light industrial, technology. I mean, there's a list of probably 15 different items that would go in this category.
I guess what I'm saying, could I say that my base zoning is a hospital, and then one of the permitted uses is a scrapyard, and it's actually a scrapyard that I'm building, and then everyone's notice says they're going to build a hospital there. Is that possible? I'm just kind of educating myself.
I guess it would be possible, but staff will sit down with the applicant and make a reasonable determination of what this use unit is. That what is probably you need to understand is this entire area is an employment reserve, and so part of the reason that we interpreted the comp plan and recommended approval for this is that apartment complex is a use that would support a large employer that is projected to go into this area. And I think the debate is, can you do an apartment complex before you have the large employer, or do you have to do them simultaneously? But in our opinion, I think the notice worked like it should. We put it out there, we got a call, they found out that they were really trying just to do an apartment complex. But that apartment complex is there intended to support a larger business at some point, which is part of the comprehensive plan for employment reserve. So,
Mr. Mayor, could I offer just one more comment?
Ready for a vote?
I think on this issue of what should be included in the notice, I think it is appropriate for the Planning and the Development Center to consider maybe giving a little bit more information in the notice to make it clear what the proposed use is. I recently responded to another rezoning PUD that was identified in the notice as an office park. And then once you went and read the design statement and visited with the applicant, that what was actually being proposed was a self-storage facility. So it had nothing to do with, there was an office within the self-storage facility. It was about 150 square feet. But if you read the notice, you would have had no idea that what was being proposed to be built at that location was a storage facility. So it is subject to being misused, and I think there is some intent on the part of some applicants to use it to disguise what is actually the proposed use. And I think this is perhaps an example of that, because it sounds pretty innocuous when you say technology park. Everyone was, well, that sounds pretty good. But when you looked into it further and learned that this applicant is an apartment developer and that their sole use they intended to construct was an apartment complex that was pretty conventional, 192 units at 3 stories, occupying 100% of the site, essentially, then that has very little connection with a technology park. And But
thank you. We digressed a bit. We should probably get back to the motion on the table, which is to send it back to Planning Commission, which we already have a motion in a second.
Yeah.
Any further discussion on that? Okay, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Or does not pass unanimously. Passes 8-1. Was that what you intended, Councilman? Okay, got it. All right. Moving on to item 9C. This is ordinance on final hearing that was recommended for approval. It is item C1 is closing a portion of a platted alley located adjacent to 1305 Northwestern. Councilwoman Salyer.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This closing had no protests related to the project we approved last time, so I would move approval.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item 9C1 was struck at the beginning of the meeting. 9D1, these are all ordinances on final hearing that were recommended for approval. This is 9D1 is a special permit to operate a scrap operations use metal recycling in the I3 Heavy Industrial District. Councilman McAtee.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Is the applicant present?
And I should have said this is at 6220 Southwest 44th.
The applicant is not present. My name is Rob Elliott with Elliott Architects at 900 Northwest 6th Street, and we were helping the applicant through the permitting process.
Okay.
Would you just give the council a brief overview of what you intend to do and some of the amenities that might be added to make it more attractive?
Well, sir, in the Planning Commission and staff review process, we're required to do additional parking, site screening, and landscaping. So all those have been through the permit and abided by.
And what type of material are you going to be recycling?
I wish Elisa and Travis were here to tell you exactly, but it's primarily, their company name is Hope Metals, and most of the questions are asked, or do they deal with public persons in terms of receiving the scrap materials, and they don't do that, but they are mostly dealing with businesses and securing large quantities of recycled materials from other corporate companies.
And this was heard by the Planning Commission and approved unanimously?
Yes, sir.
And has anybody signed up, Francis? With that being said, then, unless the council has some questions, I move for approval.
All right, I've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item 9D2, special permit to permit automotive sales in the C3 Commercial District at 3121 North May Avenue. Councilman Shadid.
Anybody signed up to speak? This had unanimous Planning Commission approval and no protests. I move for approval.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously.
Ed, is that the one that talked about having a fence? Yeah.
I don't know.
I
No one signed
think
up to
this
speak.
was the item that we received a letter from the adjacent property owner asking if we could require as part of the approval that the property be fenced so that automobiles from this lot could not be parked on the adjacent property owner's lot, which seemed like a reasonable request to me. I'm sorry I wasn't paying attention when the number came up, given that it was in Ward 2. Mr. York, I believe Mr. York is the next door property owner, and he was here to speak to this.
We apologize. Usually people sign up to speak, and that's kind of our way of knowing that you're here for this item. So currently we're in the posture of already having approved it, but we'll continue discussion on item 9D2.
Yes, I apologize for my voice, but Jim's going to speak for me. We are the property owner. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Jim Holman. I live at 601 North Broadway. There is no objection to the usage. It is, as Councilwoman Salyer mentioned, the fence is of concern to us. We have some handouts if you would like to see them to illustrate it, but simply there is on the adjacent to the car wash property, there is it's about 200 feet, 180 feet by approximately 30 feet that belongs to Mr. York. And it is, there's no division in the property other than knowing where the property line is. And our request is to put a fence there so that cars or any other paraphernalia that's involved with that business would not encroach into the property Mr. York owns. And therefore, we were asking that the fence be a requirement for the approval.
Have you had discussions with the applicant?
We have, yes.
And what was the result of those?
It resulted in no specific results.
Were they opposed or just no? Yes.
Yes. My name is Yosef Fushiar, 4800 Northeast 84th in Norman. And yes, I talked to gentlemen, and I don't mind the fence. I just suggested that they call surveyor to mark their property location. So, and then I'll be glad to share with them fence at that point.
Share the cost of the fence?
Sure, absolutely.
You're the applicant?
I'm sorry?
You're the applicant?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I mean, so it's in your hands, but you have the right to make a motion to rescind approval if you wanted to add a limitation, I suppose. But I defer to you.
I'm confused. So you have both had discussions about the fence? You've offered to split the cost?
Yes.
of the fence?
Yes, I met them on site, and as I told them that I really don't know where the property lines are, and if they go ahead and get their surveyor to mark the property corners adjacent, I'll be glad to share the cost of the fence with them.
I think, Ed, it comes down to who's going to pay the cost for the survey and splitting the cost of the fence.
Did our staff opine about?
No, I just saw the letter.
Yeah.
It came in an email yesterday, and I've done a lot of work with the Yorks over the years.
These adjoining properties are both Zone C3. There's no fencing requirements. You don't have to screen between commercially zoned properties.
But on the staff report on additional specific standards, it says this facility shall be fenced, screened, and landscaped as required by this chapter.
Well, we make that statement, but landscaping is required by code. But in this case, fencing's not a requirement unless he would have put it on his site plan. It's a condition. You can make that a condition of approval of the special permit if you'd like, but we make that statement on all the applications so they know that they have to meet the code requirements for landscaping and screening and fencing.
Okay, so that's not a requirement for us, so this is for negotiations between the adjacent property owners?
Right.
Okay.
But you do have the ability, if you want to make it a condition, you can make it a condition of special permit.
Well, I would look to you for, and I mean, if you think that
It's really a dispute between the landowners, the property owners.
Okay, so, but it's gotten unanimous planning commission approval without
Without a fence, that's correct.
Okay. So we've already voted to approve.
You could conceivably rescind it.
Reconsider, I move to reconsider the vote by which it was approved. And then
there's a second motion to reapprove it with this new condition, right?
Yes, correct.
Or you could do nothing.
Or you do nothing. I mean, you don't
Well,
have.
first, let me just ask the council for guidance or your thoughts. I mean, does anybody have a strong thought one way or the other?
The only thought I would have is, in my opinion, if someone is changing their use and a fence is going to be needed, then I would expect that they would bear the full price of that fence. I personally wouldn't come in and develop a piece of property and change the use, go, hey, there's going to be a fence needed now. By the way, over here, I need you to split that cost with me. It's borne into the cost of the new use of that property.
And that makes sense, but is a fence needed? I mean, I hear staff saying that a fence is not.
Yeah, that I can't answer, but if you're going to require a fence there, I would think that it needs to come from whoever's requesting the change of use.
I'm looking at the Google Maps. Is it, will the fence create like an alleyway on either
Of sorts,
side?
yes.
So the property line is somewhere between between your store and the current car
Right.
wash, right?
Exactly.
Okay,
And
so
at the
there
end
would
of
be,
the
so
day,
okay.
C3 does not require fencing under our code.
Sir,
Seems kinda
would you be willing to share the cost of the fence as the applicant is proposing?
What Mr. York is saying, without the car lot there, we wouldn't need the fence. We believe the specific, the request of the special permit designates our need for a fence, for a clear division line between the two properties.
Yeah, somebody said this was a dispute between property owners, and I don't think it's a dispute yet, but I think it could be if cars from the car lot get parked on Mr. York's property. I mean, I think this is a preventative movement as much as it is a, dispute resolution.
While it's not approved by the zoning code in general, but on any special permit, like Bob says, council can determine that additional conditions are needed, and you can impose them as a condition of the special permit. So it's really up to council.
Do you think that would there be some use in just spending the next 2 weeks negotiating with the applicant about the nature of the fence, cost sharing, if anybody else wants to engage in cost sharing, and we could defer this for 2 weeks?
Well, I can say two things to that. Certainly, if that prevents the approval from happening without the fence being addressed, the short answer would be yes. I would also add to that Mr. York does not believe the fence should be, that he should participate in the cost of the fence, because it's not his reason, it's not his usage, that we're asking this condition to be made for the approval, if that makes sense.
Well, this is auto dealerships, and really we don't want to put a tall wall on the one side. As I said, it's open area, and if Mr. York worry about somebody coming stealing something, I think, they would put their own fence, but I'll be glad to, as I said, even I'll be glad to divide the surveying costs. I don't care. I mean, as long as they're willing to.
But you would pay for the fence?
I mean, in reality, I mean, they pushing me. I just say we'll go ahead and divide the both costs. I mean, I pay half of the surveying costs and half of the wall costs, and it shouldn't be more than $700 each. So I don't know.
Would you negotiate with the parties for over the next 2 weeks, and then potentially call me, and then we could address this in 2 weeks?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't mind. I mean, if they decide here. I don't know why it's a hard issue. I mean, it's just a simple deal. It's not a.
And could you call me in the next 2 weeks and maybe
I certainly can.
I don't feel comfortable.
I would say
I want to
this,
talk to staff. And
Councilman, I would also say this. I respect the comment about this being an automobile outlet and not needing a fence. I'm a 50-year veteran in the automobile business, and I absolutely know that that is an incorrect statement. Cars need to have borders, period, paragraph.
Well, I'd like to talk to our staff about it also. And so I guess move to reconsider.
Rescind and then deferral. Are those two separate votes?
Yes. I move to rescind.
Okay. All right. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, cast your votes.
And I move to defer.
To the next meeting?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Got a motion and a second on the deferral. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Item is deferred.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Okay. 9E1, removing 2-hour metered parking on the south side of East Sheridan. Councilwoman Nice.
Yes, we have to take each of these separately?
Yes.
All right, so I'll move for approval of this.
Okay. Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast. Are you waiting? Oh, okay. We've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes. Councilman Shadid, you're deactivated. Right? There we go. All right. Passes unanimously. 9E2, removing a 2-hour reserved parking space for the physically disabled on the south side of East Sheridan near South Oklahoma Avenue. Councilwoman Nice.
And the reserved parking space is being relocated. It was originally approved in 2017 as a part of the Marriott Renaissance Bricktown Hotel project. So just want to make sure we're clear on why this is taking place. So we'll move for approval.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. 9E3, establishing a 2-hour metered parking space on the south side of East Sheridan near South Oklahoma. Councilwoman Nice.
Move for approval.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. 9E4, establishing a 2-hour reserved parking space for the physically disabled on the south side of East Sheridan near South Oklahoma Avenue. Councilwoman Nice.
And we'll move for approval.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. 9F, this is a public hearing regarding an ordinance related to motor vehicles and traffic, specifically in relation to motorized scooters. This is the second of 3 meetings, correct, on an ordinance change. So last meeting we had a presentation on this, and today is simply the public hearing to give the public an opportunity to speak if they so choose. We didn't have anyone sign up. Is there anyone who wishes to speak on the public hearing portion under item 9F? Seeing none, we will move on. 9G, this is the first of 3 meetings in our process of ordinance amendments. This is an ordinance to be introduced today, set for a public hearing on March 26th and a potential final hearing on April 9th, relating to the police department.
And Police Chief Bill City is here to explain these changes.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, City Manager. This ordinance basically is just making some changes to our city ordinance in relationship to disposing of property that the police department has in their property room for various reasons. Basically, state law covers everything that we're required to do as far as taking the property application to the courts, when we can dispose of it, how we can dispose of it. So this is basically cleaning up our ordinance so that it basically we use the state statute to dispose of property. We don't need everything in this because the state statute covered it. It just refers to the state statute.
Okay, any discussion? We would need a motion to introduce the ordinance for consideration. Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. This brings us to page 23 of your printed agenda, 9H. This is an ordinance to be introduced and set for final hearing on April 23rd. This amends and modifies ordinance number 24140, providing for an amendment of the franchise granted by the City of Oklahoma City to Oklahoma Natural Gas Company. I believe also item 9I, a resolution estimating the expenses for a special election, is going to be related to this, and that we have a presentation by Bob.
Bob Ponkill is here. He's our city treasurer and has the revenue enforcement unit within his operation, so he'll give us a quick background on what brought us to this point and why we're asking for the amendment.
Thank you. Good morning. In 2010, city voters approved a 25-year non-exclusive franchise to ONG for certain uses of the city's right-of-ways for purposes of sale, distribution, and transportation of natural gas to its customers. In exchange, ONG agreed to pay a 3% franchise fee to the city based on its gross receipts. The proposed natural gas franchise election is a result of an audit that was performed in late 2015. The audit recommended that certain fees be included in determining gross receipts for purposes of calculating franchise fees being paid to the city. Following discussions between city staff and ONG representatives, both parties were agreeable to adding clarifying language to the natural gas franchise ordinance to include these fees in calculating franchise payments going forward. An amendment to the franchise ordinance requires a vote of the qualified electors of the city, and ONG has agreed to pay the expenses associated with the election. I'd be happy to take any questions you might have.
Just on that last point, so ONG is paying the full cost of this citywide election?
For the franchise election, yes.
Okay. If anything were to be added to that election, then we would.
If anything is added to the election, then would have to pay the cost of for the ballots that are printed for the additional measures.
Okay, but the bulk of the.
I believe that's still the case, that they would pay the base cost plus the cost of the ballots related to the franchise agreement, and then we would pay for the portion, the additional cost that would be incurred in the election.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Bob, do we anticipate this drives additional revenue for the city?
It will drive some, yes. We're anticipating $230,000 a year annually, yeah.
So not terribly significant, but it accomplishes clarifying
Right.
the language.
Exactly. We follow the recommendations of the audit.
Do you have a sense of what their cost would be to hold the election?
I do not. I think it was.
We had a cost on this, but let me get that for you. We had a cost on what the last mayoral election was. I was thinking it was about $150,000, but let me confirm that and I'll get that for you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Bob? Seeing none, we've got a couple motions that would be necessary. And again, this is for a final hearing on April 23rd, leading up to a vote of the people citywide on July 9th.
I'd move the first item for the final hearing.
Okay. We've got a motion and a second to introduce the ordinance of 9H. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item 9I.
I'd move the second item for the expense of a special election.
Got a motion and a second on that. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Okay. This brings us to 9J1. This is a public hearing regarding the dilapidated structures here listed, except for the ones that were struck at the beginning of the meeting. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak under this public hearing? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to adopt the resolution at 9J2, resolution declaring that the structures are dilapidated. Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. 9K1, this is a public hearing regarding the unsecured structures here listed, except for the ones struck at the beginning of the meeting. Is there anyone who wishes to speak under the public hearing portion here of item 9K1? Come forward, sir. Sir, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, your name and address, and also stating the item to which you are addressing.
Yes, my name is Larry Jones. The address is 3536 East Overhoser Drive, sometimes known as North Overhoser Drive. Not sure why. It's the 91E.
Got it. Yeah, 9K1E, 3356 East Overholser Drive, aka 3536 North Overholser Drive. Got it. Okay.
Yes, sir. Received a notice on that of unsecured property. Upon examination, I did notice that the back window of a porch that's in the back part of the house, it's a big plate glass window off that porch, was busted in. I knew it had been cracked before. I did not know it had been busted in. That has since been repaired. It's been boarded up. Pending some further remodeling that's going to be done, I think that back porch will ultimately be demolished, but at least for now, the broken windows that were subject to the complaint have been repaired, boarded up and secured, put additional locks on the front door as well, because there was some issue apparently about the front door being able to be opened if you put enough force against it. But I have since padlocked those with 2 separate padlocks and hasps, so they are secured. I was not able to provide a photograph. I have it on my phone if anyone is interested about the secure measures taken in the back porch. My printer went down. I was not able to print one off for the council. But that's my understanding that is what that is on the agenda for. I made contact with the city inspector and sent him photographs of the repairs that had been made. I have not heard anything back from Mr. James on that issue, so I'm not sure where we are as far as whether the work done is to his satisfaction or not.
Councilman Griner?
Yeah, no, I'm glad you are. I'm glad you've secured it. I think that's part of the process of us notifying you that it is, and it just gives us the ability to go out and do it if you didn't do it. So if you have done it and you've sent it to staff, they're going to.
Because of the weather, it wasn't done until this past weekend, so he may not have had a chance to go ahead.
And they'll take you off the list at that point. But I think as far as now, since the process hasn't gone through, we should leave it on for now.
Okay.
Yep.
And what does that mean, though, for me as far as coming back?
It just means that you need to stay in contact with our code enforcement staff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak under the public hearing portion of 9K1? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to adopt the resolution found at 9K2, declaring that the structures are unsecured. Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. That brings us to 9L1. This is the public hearing regarding the abandoned buildings here listed, except for the ones struck at the beginning of the meeting. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak regarding the items at 9L1? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to adopt the resolution at 9L2, declaring that the buildings are abandoned. Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. 9M, items 1 and 2. This is regarding a resolution approving a revised allocation of Downtown Maps Economic Development Project Plan TIF number 2 for the Santa Fe parking garage of $1,250,000. This is the second of 2 meetings on this topic. First, 9M1 is the public hearing. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak under the public hearing portion? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion or discussion regarding 9M2. Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. 9N1 and 2. This is in regards to the joint resolution with the Oklahoma City Economic Development Trust approving the allocation of GO bonds in an amount of $1 million to colony developers, et cetera. This is the second of 2 meetings on this topic. We have a public hearing first at 9N1. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak on this item? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion for 9N2, the joint resolution. We've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Your Honor?
Yes.
After we vote, I'd like to just make a quick comment.
You sure you don't want to make it before the vote?
Well, I will. I mean, it doesn't pertain exactly to this, but I have an area that I would like for this, our Economic Development Trust to consider looking at, and that's along I-240. I-240 has seen better days in terms of economic development, and it started out as a very strong retail center back in the 60s and 70s and was very vibrant back then. As the 80s and 90s progressed, it began to decline, and now we have some challenges there. One area that could certainly see some improvement is workforce housing in terms of multifamily units. The apartment complex that are currently along I-240 were built in the early 60s, so now they're approaching 60 years old. And if you think in terms of how apartments were constructed back then compared to how they are constructed now, there's a substantial difference in terms of quality. So I believe that with some incentives in terms of looking at new workforce housing, along with some incentives for other commercial development, this area could spring back to life. We've spoken with a potential hotel developer who's looking at an area along there, one of the more modern types. Things like that could really spur some growth over there. So I'm just requesting that the Economic Development Trust looks at that area from both funding for workforce housing as well as commercial retail development.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. We have a motion and a second on item 9N2. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. 901 and 2. This is also the second of 2 meetings on this topic. 902 is a joint resolution with the Oklahoma City Economic Development Trust authorizing and directing negotiation of an agreement with Hud Hike LLC and 1212 LLC. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak under the item 901, the public hearing? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion for 902. Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Okay, 9P, resolution approving amendments to the Municipal Employees Charitable Contributions Policy. I think the city manager has a word to say about this.
Yeah, we have a committee that reviews this periodically, this policy periodically. One of the changes, there are a couple of administrative changes we make. The most significant change we're recommending is each of the federations, we have 4 federations that can partner with us in this program. And one of those, they're required right now to have at least 10 agencies in their federations. One of those has lost one of their agencies, so they're down to 9 agencies. We've worked with the United Way, who coordinates the program, and looked at this and said we'd like to lower this to 5, a requirement of at least 5 agencies in their federation. We don't think that would make a significant change, but allow us to, as far as bringing in more federations, but allow us to keep one of the federations who's been a great partner for us in the community. So we're just asking for that change.
Okay. Does anyone care to make a motion? Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. 9Q1 is a joint resolution authorizing the municipal councilor to settle the workers' compensation claim of the city regarding Eldon Bazell against Joshua Esquenazi. I do not believe we need executive session, but I would entertain a motion for the joint resolution. Got a motion? Did I hear a second? And a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. 9R1, this is a resolution authorizing the municipal councilor to confess judgment without admitting liability in the case of Johnson v. Bell in the city of OKC. I don't believe we need executive session, so I would entertain a motion for the resolution. Got a motion? and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item 9S is to enter into executive session on advice of the municipal councilor concerning the pending tort claims of Ginger Henshaw, personal representative for the estate of Wesley William Seeley. We would handle this at the end of the meeting, but would need a vote now. Got a motion and a second to go into executive session. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Again, we'll handle that at the end of the meeting, at the conclusion of our other business. This brings us to 9T1, claims recommended for denial. We have 4. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak on any of these claims recommended for denial? Seeing none, I don't believe we need executive session, so I'd entertain a motion to deny the claims. Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. 10A1 on page 28, claims recommended for approval. We have items A through N. I don't believe we need executive session to entertain a motion to approve the claims. Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. This brings us to item 11, items from council on page 29 of your printed agenda. We'll take them in order. We have item 11A, a resolution acknowledging the cultural and historic significance of the property at 1440 North Everest Avenue, known as the Brockway Center, etc. This was deferred from January 29th, February 12th, and February 26th. Councilwoman Nice, and we do have a couple people who've signed up to speak.
Okay. What we'll do is we'll read this and then we'll hear from those who have signed up to speak. And as we do that, we'll ask for Miss Jackie Hall Gates, and also Stacy McDaniel. Both women represent both the Brockway Center, Oklahoma City Federation of Colored Women's Clubs of Oklahoma, and the Care Center. And we also have Miss Finney, if you'll join us at the podium as well. Ladies, yes. As you know, we had to defer this a few times because we wanted to make sure that everyone was able to let their voices be heard pertaining to what the best way was to honor both the women and also understand the importance and significance of the Care Center. And we do have a resolution in front of you. And we also have a memorandum of understanding that both parties sat down and discussed and also agreed to. So with that, I will ask that we acknowledge this resolution between both the Care Center and also the Oklahoma City Federation of Colored Women's Clubs.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I was clearing. So I will say this, I'm going to use some of my legislative lingo from my old days. Councilwoman Nice asked unanimous consent to work from a substitute resolution. So moved. And seeing no objection, that will be the order. So we're going to work from that substitute resolution. And what was it you wanted to do next? Read it?
We can read it, and then we'll have comments from the ladies if they have any. Oh, can I let me read it? Oh, I can read it. I can read it.
You want to read it?
Yeah, I can definitely read that. This is a resolution acknowledging the cultural and historic significance of the property at 1440 North Everest Avenue, known as the Brockway Center, as a significant part of Oklahoma City community, further expressing the city's strong support for collaborative efforts to preserve the history of this monument to the strength and perseverance of members of our community in their efforts to preserve and enhance the moral, social, spiritual, economic, and civic welfare of women and children in our city, and further declaring that this rich part of the historic fabric of our city should be forever memorialized through the collaborative efforts of the Oklahoma City Federation of Colored Women's Clubs and the Care Center in a manner that expresses an architectural sensitivity that is respectful to the context and character of the neighborhood in which the Brockway Center sits, as represented by a memorandum of understanding between both the Oklahoma City Federation of Colored Women's Clubs and the Care Center. Whereas the city of Oklahoma City has declared that the historical, architectural, cultural, and aesthetic features of the city represent some of its finest and most valuable resources, and whereas in order for this great city to continue to grow and indeed thrive, it is critical that city leadership recognize and safeguard the rich heritage of the city by preserving and protecting its historic landmarks for the culture, prosperity, education, and welfare of the city and visitors to this great city. And whereas the 1960s were one of the most tumultuous and divisive decades in world history, marked by the civil rights movement, the Vietnam War, and anti-war protests, political assassinations, and the emerging generation gap with racism rearing its ugly head both nationwide and in our fair city. And whereas, after establishing clubhouses at 2 other locations, the City Federation of Negro Women's Clubs, also known as the Oklahoma City Federation of Colored Women's Clubs, relocated its clubhouse to 1440 North Everest in 1968 when the ladies purchased the property. The property was then named the Brockway Center in honor of their former president, Maud Brockway. And whereas the club continued with its mission to advance the moral, economic, social, and spiritual welfare of all families, continuing to live up to its motto, lifting as we climb. And the Brockway Center, located for some 43 years, positively impacting the lives of many. And whereas, even after the property was sold, it remained known as the Brockway Center, a visual beacon and tribute to what had begun in 1896 as a new era in African American womanhood, providing a vehicle for positive action through organized effort. And whereas, the Care Center acquired the property in 2018 with plans to expand its child abuse response and evaluation services for children with its worthy mission to end child abuse in Oklahoma County. And whereas, as part of its expansion, plans were made by the Care Center to demolish the existing former Brockway Center. And whereas, the City of Oklahoma City commends the continued mission of the Care Center to provide important and necessary services to continue its positive impact on city youth. And whereas, the City Federation of Negro Women's Clubs has long served as a beacon in this community, not only for women and youth, but also for all who gleaned hope for a bright future because of their efforts of the courageous and devoted women who established the magnificent Brockway Center. And whereas the property has an official determination of eligibility via the federal review process for listing in the National Register of Historic Places as a contributing property to the Gaston Heights, Culbertson Heights Historic District. In addition, the Oklahoma State Historic Preservation Office has identified this property as individually eligible for the National Register of Historic Places. And whereas, the City of Oklahoma recognizes the Brockway Center's contribution to the historical, architectural, and archaeological heritage of the State Medical Center Improvement and Zoning District, and indeed the state of Oklahoma. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Council of the City of Oklahoma City that the former Brockway Center is of such great historic and cultural significance that the Care Center's new structure on the site should serve as a perpetual recognition and testament to the merging of old and new, and the continued acknowledgement of the importance of this great beacon to raising the level of women and children to the highest plane in the home, morally, socially, spiritually, economically, and civically, and for its contribution to the historical, architectural, and archaeological heritage of this great city. Be it further resolved that the Council of Oklahoma City hereby recognizes the efforts of the Oklahoma City Federation of Colored Women's Clubs and the Care Center toward collaboration in a manner that expresses architectural sensitivity to the context and character of the neighborhood in which the Brockway Center now sits, as represented by a memorandum of understanding between both the Oklahoma City Federation of Colored Women's Clubs and the Care Center. And this should be adopted this day of 2019. And we'll hear from the ladies.
Francis, look out if you might want to watch out for your...
I don't envy you, Ms. Francis, I promise.
We are just overjoyed at the Care Center that we were able to sit down and really just have a conversation about how the ladies wanted things to turn out, and we're going to be working very closely together to make sure the things that are in memorial or how we're honoring is exactly what they intend. So we're excited to be able to serve the thousands more children that are severely abused in our county that need our services the most while honoring the past.
Jackie Gates. I am grateful that we have been able to come together and clear this so that I think the most important thing from the Oklahoma City Federation of Colored Women's Clubs was the fact that we did not want our history erased. And so I think with the memorandum of understanding, we are definitely happy and comfortable with what we plan to see on that corner. Make no mistake, we're sad to see Brockway Center go. I want that very clear. We are very sad to see that go. However, we do understand that we must go forward, and we're happy to collaborate with the Care Center because we know that they do great work that is significant even in our community as well. I mean, for the city of Oklahoma City. But the Oklahoma City Federation also does great work. So thank you for letting us speak.
I'd just like to say that after sitting down with the Care Center representatives and all, that we were able to talk about what we wanted, what they wanted, and we were able to come to a conclusion. The main thing is we would like the memory of Mrs. Maud Jane Brockway to be a lasting memorial, because this woman spent 25 years as president of the Oklahoma Federation of Colored Women. And most people, you know, after 3 or 4 years, that's enough. But our main concern was that the building that will be replaced will meet the historical circumstances and whatever's going on there, and it would not be a standout, but it would blend in with the current community.
All right, thank you. And let me be clear too with something. I know I did have a news station reached out to me, and also a printed publication, and I didn't respond because, in my opinion, this was not my story. I wanted the women's story to be told, and that's why we're here today. And I also want to thank, with so much gratitude, one of our legal department, Mrs. Rita. Thank you so much for assisting in this effort to get this done, and for everyone to be able to come to the table and talk about what we want and how to make sure that the memory is never erased from the history of what these women have contributed to Oklahoma since 1910. So they'll be celebrating their 110 years of being a club next year. And their banner sits right now at the Smithsonian Museum of African American History in Washington, D.C. So we should always remember the ladies of the Oklahoma City Federation of Colored Women's Clubs. And with that, I ask that we approve this resolution and also the memorandum of understanding.
Second. Thank you. Councilwoman Nice, we had a couple more people sign up to speak on this item that have not spoken yet, so I might turn to them before we vote, but I recognize we have a motion now. Ron Summers? Okay. What about Liv Teganu? And then after Liv, I know Councilman McAtee had something to say.
Hi, Liv Teganu, 3720 Northwest 60th Terrace. I want to know, I believe that this building was listed as a historical landmark in 2010, and want to make sure that that's listed in the memorandum. Also, it's been listed with the Historic Registry, and I found some documents that also noted that it was part of the archaeology. I haven't gotten a chance to research that piece yet. However, I believe that this building should be preserved for the history of the East Side and the people that, these women that served as well. If that can't be done, again, the building should represent the community and not, the building that's built should be, I don't know how to say it, but I think that needs to be taken into account here and put onto that memorandum.
And I agree, and that's one of the things that we were able to sit down and make sure, and that's one thing we've been talking about as far as council is concerned, because we don't have that oversight to save these buildings. And with this particular case, it has to go in front of the Capital Medical Zoning Association. So that's for those. That would be the next step for those who may have concerns about about the building possibly being demolished. But with this is for us to just make sure we are acknowledging the historical context of the building, what the women stood for, and also what the care center, their great work that they do. So that's what this one is for.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, probably worth noting, especially with so many historic preservation folks in the room, that in contrast to the next item that we're going to discuss, this one happens to fall into a unique part of Oklahoma City where we don't have jurisdiction over demolition permits. It's in the capital. So what this resolution is the product of a lot of great work that hopefully is going to inform what happens at the Capital Planning Commission, but ultimately is outside of our jurisdiction.
Okay. Before it was rezoned into the medical zone, I believe it was part of a historic district, and then it was rezoned. I
just want to clarify, we don't do the zoning for that area.
Okay.
It's in it's by the Capitol, so it's like Vatican City. We have no.
Gotcha.
That's a bit of a stretch.
Councilman McAtee had specifically wanted to say something.
Real quick, the care center, I just want to make it sure. I got a very good conversation with one of your people yesterday, and we talked about the different ramifications of this. The care center is satisfied with this agreement? That's a yes or no question.
Yeah, both parties sat down, we all sat and talked.
Yes, sir. We're very happy. That's all we ever wanted was the ability to honor the women in the way that they saw fit. To answer the question, the house was not on the historic registry. There was evidently some type of monument that was put up, but the house was owned previously 2 times before. I do not know what happened to that monument. I've been at the care center a little over 5 years, so when I arrived, it wasn't there, and there were no real visible signs that it was ever the Brockway Center. But we're changing that, and we're going to make sure the Brockway Center and the care center are joined and united in the future of our history.
And then, Your Honor, if I could, a quick question. On the resolution, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. About 8 lines up from the bottom, the word forever memorized. The word forever is used?
Yes.
Okay. And then on the next page, on the last, perpetual recognition, does that cause us any potential problems down the way using things like forever and perpetual?
Well, I mean, I kind of remind you again, this doesn't really have the force of law, you know. It's an expression of our opinion and our hopes.
We did take that terminology, perpetual and forever, out of the MOU. Because those are very finite terms, so, but in the memorandum and understanding, I think the power behind saying that, yes, we want to preserve this history forever is powerful.
Councilwoman Nice.
And to your point, Councilman McAtee, the women had already started the process of trying to get it registered and listed as a under their National Registry of Historic Places. So that process had already started to begin in 2010. So it just hadn't fully been finished. And then an owner right before he sold the property, he made sure he'd submitted documents to also continue that process.
Kenny, very minor thing. Scrivener's error on the last whereas on page 2. It should say whereas the City of Oklahoma City. I don't think that requires an amendment. I'm sure that falls into the category of Scrivener's error. So, and more importantly, Councilwoman Nice, I just commend you. I think it's a rite of passage for an elected official to negotiate their first compromise. So I think it's been fun to watch, and I think you've done a great
Hot coffee
job.
for everybody afterwards.
So thank you for your work on this. And we do have a motion and a second on the table, and everybody who signed up to speak has spoken. So is there any further discussion from the council? Seeing none, cast your votes. The resolution passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, now we will move on to item 11B. This is a resolution initiating an application to designate First Christian Church and Jewel Box Theater at 3700 North Walker Avenue as a historic landmark overlay district. Councilman Shadid, I'll let you take it from here, but I will tell you that we've got quite a few people who signed up to speak.
So a couple of things. It's important to remember, number one, that we're not voting today on whether to do historic landmark zoning overlay. This is just to initiate the process. And I'll ask Kathy Riddle, our Historic Preservation Officer of the city, to answer some questions about that process, because we haven't done it very many times. We've only done it 8 times in our city's history. I also have a question for Kathy O'Connor, if she's here, just about economic development. Hopefully, I won't spend a lot of time that this is a historic structure. I mean, the council's already opined and voted years ago to sign off on placing this on the National Register of Historic Places where it currently resides. It's an iconic structure with a neo-expressionist design within the mid-century modern movement style of architecture. It is recognized within the state, and it's recognized within the country for its unique and iconic architecture. Next to it is the Jewel Box Theater, which is Oklahoma City's longest standing community theater. I believe this whole area is about 32 acres. Boyd, will you go to the next? The area is all zoned R1. In the bottom left corner is the church and the Jewel Box Theater, which is zoned C3. There's a CUP 26 overlay, which this predates our existing zoning ordinance. So that's basically like a PUD, restricting some uses. But basically, it's R1 and then C3 in the area in question. Can you go to the next? So these are the 8 historic landmarks in Oklahoma City. I think it's hard to argue that the church, the First Christian Church, is not on par or exceeds the level of historic importance of these 8 structures. Is Katie here? Oh, okay. Well, can I ask you a question? So I'll summarize kind of my understanding and then tell me. So my understanding is that to initiate a historic landmark, which is a rezoning, you're putting a zoning overlay over existing zoning, that there are any of 4 entities that could do that: the City Council, the Planning Commission, the Historic Preservation Commission, or the property owner. That that to initiate the process requires a simple majority. Then it goes to the Historic Preservation Commission, who has up to 90 days to opine whether they believe it warrants historic landmark status. Then it goes to Planning Commission for their advisory position, and then back to the City Council. If the property owner is in favor, it requires 5 out of 9 votes. If they're opposed, it would require 7 out of 9 votes.
Yes, that's correct.
In the Historic Preservation Commission meeting last week, the vice chair indicated that she intended to bring the same initiation process forward on April 3rd. And my understanding in talking and then hearing other comments after that from the Horseshoe and talking to a couple of counselors, it sounds like that's likely to pass. So if that were to pass on April 3rd, that would initiate the process at that point, assuming the council did not do it today. Is that correct?
That's correct.
If, whether the council did it today or they did it on April 3rd, that would initiate a moratorium on, well, let me see if I understand it. A moratorium on demolition, but if the applicant needed, say they had damage to the building, say they needed to do repairs, they needed a CA for repairs to the building, or even if they wanted to demolish it, they could still present that request to the Historic Preservation Commission during this 180-day period. And the Historic Preservation Commission would basically act as if it already had historic landmark status and could then grant those CAs for work on the building, or is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So there would be nothing, if we were to initiate this process, there would be nothing to prevent work on the buildings if they needed it, if they were damaged, if a window needed to be repaired. It wouldn't absolutely preclude that. It would just have to go to the Historic Preservation Commission.
Yes, I'm Katie Friddle, Planning Department staff, and the ordinance, when it talks about the 180-day moratorium, it essentially says that no permits can be issued 180 days after this process is initiated, except in that if a permit is needed, they could go to the Historic Preservation Commission as if they were already designated a landmark.
And it wouldn't necessarily be 180 days if the Historic Preservation Commission didn't take the full 90 days. It's whichever is shorter.
Correct. 180 days or until the review of the proposed designation is complete, whichever is shorter of the two.
Thank you so much. So I just have, so I just have a couple of thoughts about why maybe this is a little bit unique in some of the historic landmarks. Number one, well, both have to do with property tax and the fact that it's a church. There are a couple of churches on that list. But long before any of us were here, those who decided tax policy decided to exempt certain charitable organizations, nonprofits, churches, other religious facilities. And there are different reasons for doing that, but first and foremost is that we feel that there's a communal benefit. We feel there's a communal benefit to having these places of worship, and so we've exempted such facilities and real estate from property tax. And that was, again, decided long before any of us. Now, what that means is that the rest of us as taxpayers have to pick up the extra slack. And so we have to contribute extra property tax for things that would increase the value of the property. For example, across the street is one of the city's nicest neighborhood parks, Crown Heights Parks, right? Which is paid for with our property taxes. We get bonds, we build things in the park, we maintain the parks. We as taxpayers pay for that. For 70 years, we've basically subsidized the church in the streets that deliver people to the property, in the maintenance of the streets, in the park that's across the street where people can leave Sunday school or after church and go right across the street and into this park, which is maintained and paid for capital improvements by the taxpayer. Fronting a park like that increases your property value. We provide 24-hour police and fire service. When there was a rally last Thursday, there's a police car and police presence. Possibly that police car is paid for with the bond. The property, we as taxpayers are subsidizing these religious institutions, and we do so because we believe there's a communal benefit. So now, when we're asking for not necessarily complete preclusion of demolition, but just for a timeout, ultimately that's what's being asked for, is not to have a process where you can file for a demolition permit and then 15 minutes later, as in the case of the Founders Bank on May Avenue, just start demolishing without any public process. Because what we've learned and what the Donoy building has proved, and I think what this building is going to prove, is that having a timeout, having a public discussion, potentially brings bidders to the process that weren't previously involved once they understand the the importance to the community. With the Donaway building, we were told that it couldn't be saved, that nobody was interested in buying it and renovating it. After the public outcry and a delay, Brahms withdrew, and you had a third party come out of nowhere, really, that decided to buy it and put money into renovating it. My understanding from multiple media reports, people within the church, is that this public process, this public discussion is working, that there are new bidders for this property that weren't there maybe just a few weeks ago. So there is benefit to having this kind of public discussion and having a timeout. And ultimately, that's what this process is about, is the public discussion and a timeout, and not doing what is unfathomable to me and many others, which is just demolishing within minutes of applying for a permit without public discussion. Second, I'm convinced, in talking with many people over the last few weeks, that not everybody understands all the economic development tools that would potentially be available to redevelop a property like this. And there's Kitty. So, Kathy, there's a local development act passed by the legislature that creates the ability to create, for example, increment financing, tax increment financing districts. And this is from the Local Development Act. And there are 4 criteria for really 3. Number 4 is just a combination of those. But number 2 is a historic preservation area. So a historic preservation area was decided by the legislature in creating this as a justification for creating an increment district. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah. It's a part of the Local Development Act. It's one of the criteria that has to be present. You know, it can be one of those 3 or a combination of all 3 that are required to create a tax increment financing district.
So now a tax increment financing district is where you take the increase in the property tax after whatever redevelopment versus what was being paid before. So if it's a religious institution that's not paying, presumably you'd have potentially significant increment, and that increment could be placed into the redevelopment costs, bridge financing, et cetera.
Yes, yeah. But there would have to be
a private developer that
private development increment generated either through payment of taxes or payment in lieu of taxes can also work. And we've done that in some instances, especially around the Health Sciences Center.
And other funds that we've used in the past would be like CDBG, low interest or no interest loans.
I'm not going to say absolutely that it would be eligible, but we have used Section 108 loans for projects in the past. We used it on the Skirvin Hotel, for example, as a part of the package of incentives that went towards that project to make sure that it was rehabbed. I think the state and federal historic tax credit is also a really important component of these projects. And again, it works best when it's used by a taxable entity, by someone who creates a tax liability. So, there are other tools out there.
And this structure already being on the National Register of Historic Places would potentially qualify for those kind of tax incentives.
Yes, they have to go through a process to qualify. There's a review process through the Department of Interior, but been used a lot on a lot of projects in Oklahoma City, especially in the downtown TIF district. The Skirvin is a good example. The First National will be a good example. Several projects in Midtown used a combination of tax increment financing and historic tax credits, state and federal historic tax credits to make those projects possible. The Marion Hotel that was on that list is one of them.
Thank you very much. I'm grateful. I just want to make sure everybody understands all the...
Absolutely, it's a tool.
Thank you. So with that, David,
we'll begin just in order as received. So we have first David Box, who I believe represents the current property owner.
Good morning. David Box, 522 Colcord Drive. Most of the times that I stand at this podium, I say I'm here on behalf of the applicant. Today we find ourselves in an extraordinary position in which I am here on behalf of the owner of the subject property, that is not the applicant, that is not a willing participant in this process, but has been forced here. And I think that's important. Every zoning case I've ever appeared on, it is either the owner of the property or it's an applicant that has a letter of authorization on behalf of the owner of the property that allows them to come and file a rezoning case. This would be an extraordinary measure by the City Council to impose their will against the desire and against the rights of the current property owner. Before I go through some of the details and some of the problems that I see with this, I do think it's important that somebody from the church speak. Dr. Shadid referenced many media reports. The one thing that I don't think anybody has heard is, what does the church want? As the people that own the property and have sought to own it for decades, I think it's important that the council actually hear from the church rather than just the speculation that continues to swirl both online and in the print media. So with that, I'd ask Mr. Reverend Malgott to the podium to give a brief statement.
I'm Reverend John Malgott, pastor at First Christian Church, Disciples of Christ of Oklahoma City. We have been around since April of 1889. We were one of the land-run churches that were founded the day after the land run. So this isn't just about the last 60-some years in this place, but it's about a community of faith that has been around for more than a century. We still believe that we are the church of tomorrow, but we're not tied to a building. I'm trying to save a community of faith that is doing good work in Oklahoma City right now. Over the last 5 years, we started a bicycle ministry called Chain Reaction Ministries. We have given over 3,000 bicycles away to the homeless, to the working poor, so that they can have transportation to be able to get to and from work, because you cannot keep a job that you can't get to. And when you're poor, your work schedules usually don't run with the bus lines. We have done so much work with the homeless in this community. We work with the Mobile Meals Program. We're doing missional work for the unserved in this community. Of those bicycles, we were presented an award by the VA in the fall because over 1,000 of those bicycles have gone to Oklahoma veterans. We are a community of faith trying to survive, and putting this designation on our property will cause some problems, even if we sell to someone who wants to keep the building. And please hear me, we want someone to buy the property that wants to keep the building. But like, for instance, the Joe Box Theater, it's not really ADA compliant, but we were grandfathered in because it's been there so long. But the new owners are going to have to, if they're going to use that building, make it ADA compliant. Well, the only way you're going to be able to do that is to knock out the walls of that building and expand it out for wheelchair. With this designation, you can't change the look of the outside. There's a lot of issues besides just the building. We want the building to be saved, but we want to move forward as a community of faith. Thank you.
I think it's important to note that there's a lot of talk about demolition. This is not a demolition permit. This is not a fight about whether or not to demolish the building. As you heard the Reverend say, they don't want to demolish the building. What this designation would do is reduce the pool of potential buyers. It would limit the ability of the church to continue their mission of faith. Because what's likely to happen is the price that somebody's willing to pay is going to go down. And so you'll have a series of opportunistic buyers that will come in. And so this isn't about demolition. This has been for sale for, I think, 3 years now. And so why this is just now bubbling up, I'm not sure. I think it's important to maybe look at some other case studies where this has happened. Specifically, a Washington Supreme Court case entitled First Covenant Christian Church of Seattle versus City of Seattle, 120 Washington 2nd, 203. There, the First Covenant Christian Church of Seattle sued the City of Seattle, challenging the constitutionality of a landmark preservation ordinance as applied to their church. That designation, much like the designation that would happen here, required the First Covenant to get a certificate of approval before making any changes to the church exterior. There, the Washington Supreme Court found that the ordinance violated the church's right of free exercise of religion and held that the preservation was not a compelling state interest to justify the burden of first Christians' right to free exercise. Now, you might say that this is a different situation, but I think, frankly, it's an identical situation for two reasons. There, the court held that the ordinance impermissibly burdened the church's right of free exercise in two ways. One, administratively, because it required First Covenant to seek approval of the governmental body before it alters the house of worship. And finally, and perhaps more importantly, financially, because the ordinance reduced the value of the church's property by almost half. It is clear that a financial burden on a religious activity, if too gross, may unconstitutionally infringe on free exercise. Thus, the designation so grossly diminished the value of the church's principal asset that it burdens First Covenant's right to free exercise of religion. One of the things that I think is important about historic preservation or historical landmarks is the right to decide. There's many people that live in neighborhoods or homes that are zoned historical preservation. Myself. My wife and I and kids live in a neighborhood that is zoned HP. We had the benefit of weighing the pros and the cons because there are significant burdens that come with having a house that's zoned HP. You don't get to just go change the windows to put in energy efficient windows. It doesn't work that way. You have to comply with all the historical preservation guidelines. What this would do is take that decision essentially away from the property owner. They wouldn't get to make the decision, do they want to buy or do they want to own a piece of property that is zoned historical? Instead, it would be you, the city council, imposing your will upon these people. And I don't think that's right. I think they, like every other property, has the right to decide, do we want it to be zoned or do we not? And I do think that it reduces property values. You're going to hear, I think, from a lot of folks that they don't think it does, but I think just common sense tells us that if there are no burdens now, it's going to be worth a certain value. If there are extra burdens on a piece of property, it will reduce the potential pool of buyers. And it will reduce the potential pool of buyers that will be willing to submit lower offers. And so again, this isn't about demolition. This is about a property owner maintaining their property rights that they have enjoyed on this piece of property for decades and allowing them to find a buyer that hopefully can keep and maintain the church. This isn't about demolition. This is about property rights. So we'd be happy to answer any questions you have, but we would ask for you to not pass this resolution. Let this property owner continue to enjoy the property rights that they have had for decades and find a suitable buyer that will keep and maintain the church. Thank you.
Thank you. Marty Dillon. And a kind of a blanket statement for the next 10 speakers. If you can, state your name and address, and then also try to keep your remarks below 3 minutes. And as this progresses, if you feel like somebody's kind of already said what you said, a me too, kind of is certainly fine as well. You don't have to repeat the same sentiment over and over. But Marty, you're first up, so you get the...
Hi, I'm Marty Dillon of 600 Northwest 32nd Street, and I'm going to have Ken speak in my behalf. Crown Heights Edgemere.
Okay.
Hi, Ken Fitzsimmons, 1228 Northwest 36th Street, and I'm here to read a letter from Christine Eddington, President of Crown Heights Edgemere Heights Neighborhood Association. And it says, on behalf of the Board of Directors of the Crown Heights Edgemere Heights Neighborhood Association, I am writing to express our support of City Councilman Ed Shadid's intention to call a vote of City Council to designate the First Christian Church located at Northwest 36th Street and Walker Avenue a historic landmark. We agree that it should be designated a landmark and encourage the remainder of the council to vote in favor. It would be detrimental to our neighborhood for the church to be torn down without appropriate process and review of proposed plans in order to make way for unspecified commercial use. Although I cannot physically be present tomorrow morning, we support Councilman Shadid's initiative to add a measure of public process to any proposed changes to the northeast corner of Northwest 36th and Walker. Please feel free to read aloud or otherwise share this letter. Sincerely, Christine Eddington, President, Crown Heights, Edgemere Heights Neighborhood Association. Thank you.
Thank you. Kenneth Dennis.
Yeah, good morning. I'm Kenneth Dennis. I'm the president-elect of the American Institute of Architects Central Oklahoma chapter here at 1300 North Chartel. And we just want to concur with some of the comments that have already been made. Again, as Councilman Shadid had stated, by declaring the church a historic landmark, it will ensure that there is a review process before the church can be demolished with a future buyer. And we feel that this is absolutely necessary for such an iconic piece of architecture and history in our city. And then also, most importantly, by having this review process, again, it allows that time out for other potential buyers to generate, more interest on the property. Again, it has been proven advantageous for other projects or other buildings in recent history, the Gold Dome and the Donné Building. So we do encourage you to support the motion and designate the First Christian Church as a historic landmark here in Oklahoma City. Thank you for your time and for your thoughtful consideration of this issue.
Thank you. Everyone's being so efficient with their words. Thank you so much. Matt Goad, is it?
I think you spoke too soon because I'm about to say a few more words. My name is Matt Goad. I am a resident in the historic neighborhood, Edgemere Park, just south. I'm on the board of trustees there, 201 Northwest 35th Street. I've been there 25 years. I'm also a preacher's kid. My dad always said, the church isn't the building, it's the people. Well, the people of that church, most are gone. And when we say we, including the minister here, when I was a member there less than 10 years ago, he wasn't there. And as far as that church goes, and it being the people, the fact is the congregation that built that church is no longer with us. And the church now is dwindled, and the building is significant to our neighborhood as an anchor of a historic nature. And I have a few things I want to say. I'm a branding person, artist, and a branding designer. I've been that for 30 years. Many brands and campaigns, for the public and private sectors. And this structure is an anchor to not only our historic area, but a part of the brand of Oklahoma City. I'm going to just say a couple things because I'm rambling. I'm sorry. The First Christian Church is a significant example of the era of design which has been documented and written about by architecture and design scholars for years, but is just now being recognized internationally by a much larger public population. Not many examples such as this exist, and in time will prove even more rare and significant. The church leadership, this is as Dr. Shadid said, have run this facilities tax exempt for decades, of which the taxpayers have covered. The taxpayers should have a say in whether it is sold or be torn down and replaced or sold to an organization that values the public tax investment in the building. The building and campus do have income generating potential. I think the issue really here is how much money can we get off this building, and in my perspective, and I think everyone wants it saved, but really this is about money, as most things are, and I just would like to, as someone who is invested in the area, I think living in a historic area is amazing. I love the fact that my neighbors can't just replace their windows or put an awning or something on their historic home, because it's important to the neighborhood in general. That's why we have these in place, and that is all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Kayla Lewis.
Hello, Kayla Lewis, 200 Northwest 22nd Street. My name is Kayla Lewis, and I am the Executive Director for Preservation Oklahoma, statewide nonprofit dedicated to promoting and supporting historic preservation. And we actually sent in our letter of support early February. But I did just want to say, I know that there will be several issues from the people talking, but First Christian Church was listed on Preservation Oklahoma's Most Endangered Places list in 2017 and in 2019 this year. So it's not a new topic, we know that. But it's also, as mentioned before, listed on the National Register, yet both of those don't necessarily guarantee protection or preservation through this. But these recognitions do showcase that this is a significant property, that people really care about it. And as many others have shared and will continue to share, there's still work to do. First National Bank, as also Ed mentioned, is another example of a property which was listed on Preservation Oklahoma's Most Endangered Places list, and we all know what happened to that. It being listed as a national landmark, First Christian Church, allows for an extra layer of review, as we've talked about as well, and a better chance of survival. Also, as Ed mentioned, there are less than 10, I think he said 8 historic landmarks, and if we compare that to other cities, we're looking at Dallas, 100 so, Austin, 600 so, and other cities just all across the nation. We are very low in the number of historic landmarks that we have, and so when Oklahoma City is trying to, set itself apart as a big league city and trying to build that brand and that recognition, the more we tear apart what makes us Oklahoma City and take down all of that historic and cultural significance, the less we are essentially a big league city. We care about the final outcome of this property, of course, but we also care about the process and its deserved recognition through being a historic landmark and the process of review that would come along with that. When it's mentioned, why are we just now worrying about this, that it's been for sale for 3 years, again, mentioning that it was on our Most Endangered Places in 2017. It's not new news. But the phrase that the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now, which is why we are talking about this now. So it's pleasing to see the steps that are being taken for the Brockway Center, and I hope you will consider seriously adding this to Oklahoma City's historic landmark. Thank you.
Thank you. Pamela Holt, no relation.
I'm Reverend Pamela Holt. I serve as the regional minister for the Christian Church Disciples of Christ in Oklahoma. I function as a bishop, and I oversee 148 congregations in the region of Oklahoma, which also includes 285 clergy. Our denomination is congregationally governed, which means that each congregation is in covenant with the denomination, but each church also has its own constitution and bylaws for governance. These documents provide guidance for the participating members to govern their decisions about legal issues, property issues, administrative issues, the call of a pastor, and ministry. First Christian Church has 40 participating members, none of whom are advocating for this resolution. The individuals who are advocating for this designation are not members of this congregation. They do not attend worship, nor do they pay any money into the coffer, so to speak, for the upkeep of the property and the building and the administration and the mission and ministry of this church. I don't wish to be critical of the important work of preserving historical buildings in Oklahoma City at all. In fact, I'm grateful for that. And I appreciate the community folks' passion for and the emotional attachment to this iconic building. Sanctuary. It is a unique architecture that was designed by Mrs. Rothschild's grandfather, and it no doubt served as a significant and emotional location during the Oklahoma bombing, rescue, and recovery time. But a decision by the City Council to approve this resolution is detrimental to the active members of First Christian Church. In fact, it would harm them. The value of the property will diminish and will certainly limit potential buyers. The members of First Christian Church need to sell this property at a fair market value with no limits so that the church members no longer have to spend enormous dollars for the upkeep of the building, and so they can move to a location which better accommodates the practice of the ministry of Jesus Christ into the community. Also, if this resolution is affirmed by the City Council, I would argue this would be interfering in religious matters of the church and would be a violation of religious freedom, which is protected by the United States Constitution. Thank you.
Thank you. Tony Blatt?
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Tony Blatt, 1721 Northwest 180th Street, on behalf of the Oklahoma City Foundation for Architecture, of which I am the chair. I'm not going to repeat the sentiments of many individuals that you've already heard, but our foundation, our mission, is promoting design excellence in our environment. We feel like this building is a shining example of that, and we would like for you to please entertain the motion of assigning it its landmark status. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Lynn Rostashil. Well, you've given me practice the last few meetings.
I know you guys are going to be really happy when I'm not bugging you anymore. Hi, good morning. Thank you. First of all, I just want to say, when Mr. Box says this is not a matter of demolition, I completely disagree with that. We originally heard about all of this when we were hearing that the potential buyer was calling around in the city asking what the demo restrictions were, and there are none. We would not have initiated all this had we not heard that these buildings were going to come down, and that has been verified with a conversation Councilman Shadid had with someone on the board. So this was a very real threat demolition, and I completely disagree with Mr. Box when he says that is not the case. Also, Councilwoman Salyer, the first meeting I was at on January 29th, she challenged someone to step up and be the champion for this church. And I respect so much what she has done in our city. I agreed. Someone needed to be a champion for this building. And so me and my group, the Okie Mod Squad, decided we were going to stand up and be champions. We started the petition, which has over 5,200 signatures now. We got out there, we met people, talked to Preservation Oklahoma, Oklahoma City Foundation for Architecture, Central Oklahoma AIA. I believe the Tulsa Foundation for Architecture has also sent you a letter. We got media attention, and all of that work has led to 3 new potential buyers coming and putting offers on the table. We have been champions and we have gotten results. And because of all of our work, we've been able to have a conversation about this. And so we are now asking you guys to be the champion and to let this building, let that conversation continue, let it be a landmark. I think this building deserves it. Also, Pastor Malgett, who their ministry is really great, by the way. They do some really wonderful things in the community, and we completely support them. They're a great congregation, even though they're very small, they're very effective. I know they don't want this church torn down. And thanks to our efforts, hopefully they have some other options to consider. But those 3 other offers came after they knew about the landmarking, our efforts. So obviously they're not too intimidated by this building becoming a landmark, or they wouldn't have stepped up with offers. I would also like to reiterate what Councilman Shadid said about the church being tax exempt. There have also been members who have volunteered time, money, endowments, all of those things. The community has been an integral part of this church. So I do think the community does have a say in what happens to it. Also, I just would like to say, because this church is, where the church is Zone C3, I think there's no doubt that something commercial would go in that spot. So I did a little research, and there was a traffic study from 2016 at this intersection, and during a 24-hour period, 18,526 cars went through this intersection. And at the time, I thought, oh, okay, well, that's not too many. But then I looked around at other traffic studies in different areas right around this area. None of them compare to the number of cars. The closest intersection that does is on 23rd, and we know how busy 23rd is. Even Western, just north of 36, doesn't get near the volume of cars that this intersection gets. So if a commercial structure goes here, gas station, fast food, I mean, those are kind of the biggest things going right now, both of which have drive-throughs, because that's 70% of, fast food business these days is through the drive-through. Then you would have to do some serious fixing of the roads here, expanding the roads. Right now at the intersection, you cannot go south from 36 onto Walker. That would have to be somehow amended. Walker might have to be expanded. This could be a real Pandora's box, this intersection. And so you're asking, what does that have to do with landmarking? Well, if the building is landmarked, then that conversation comes into play too, and all the practicalities of what would go in there would have to come into play and be discussed. One final thing. My husband is not a preservationist. He's not an architecture lover, and he and I went out to dinner the other night, and I was kind of talking about, our side of the argument and their side of the argument. And by the way, we're friends. I don't think anyone is the enemy here. But my husband, he's like, oh yeah, wah, wah, wah. He said, it doesn't really matter. All these arguments don't really matter. What matters is that building worthy of being a landmark? And I think it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Colin McCormick. Colin McCormick. Okay. Mark Falk.
Thank you. I hate following Lynn, but she's amazing. First of all, my name's Mark Falk. I'm at 803 Northwest 32nd Street, so we're about 4 blocks away from that building. I'm a lifelong Oklahoman and fifth generation. We started the Paseo Festival decades ago, and also I want to thank Ed Shadid and say we will miss you up here. It's phenomenal, and I look forward to our new council people coming in, and to Nikki also as well. I think this is about a couple of things. This is about character and integrity. And no, I'm not talking about the council in any way. I believe in your character and integrity when it comes to this. I believe this is about the character and integrity of Oklahoma City. We have, over the years, destroyed many, many beautiful buildings, while other cities have moved towards preserving their character and their integrity. In Oklahoma City, the IMPA plan was a disaster. I think most of us would agree that at the very least, a lot of those buildings should have been saved. I went out and filmed quite a bit when they were bulldozing Founders Bank a few weeks ago, and at some point I'll have a video put together of that. And it was a sad moment. The reason we need to save buildings like this, and first of all, I actually believe we should put together a committee and find these buildings in advance so that we don't have to come up here one at a time fighting for these buildings as they're on the chopping block. I don't think that's a good process. But I believe that the character and the integrity of a city is defined not just by its progress, but by its history. I believe that as a city that has character and history and a building that is unique in the world, this is one of the buildings that Oklahoma City can say, this is not a fast food restaurant, this is not one of 1,500 of a franchise, this is a unique building. This is a unique building. This is one of the reasons that we are set apart from every other city in America. I think that it is your responsibility as a council to save our integrity and to preserve our character as a city. I believe that that this building not only defines us, I believe that it is the last of the few buildings that actually you drive into Oklahoma City and you see that building and you see nothing else like it. This building is a work of art. This to me, this is not just architecture. This is a work of art. I understand that the church does amazing things, and I agree with that, and I applaud you for that very much. But I also believe that we have to look at the building, and we have to understand that in the past, when we all worked together and saved the Donne building, yes, a buyer came up. It did not impede that process. It does not take away the potential for saving the building. If anything, the attention that Lynn and some of these organizations have brought to this building have brought in, as she said, more buyers. People who understand the historical significance. Right now they're redoing the Habana Inn over on 39th Street. I believe Founders could have been saved had we been, had the opportunity. Founders Bank, as an example, they went and got their permit and they were bulldozing within an hour. They were bulldozing. By the time we heard about it and got there, they had taken chunks out of a building that does not exist anywhere else in America. And it is to our shame that we have not preserved and saved these buildings in our history. And it is incumbent upon you as a body to understand that you have a responsibility. You have a responsibility to not just move forward and build great new things that put us into the 21st century, but to preserve the things that have made us a unique city. And I implore you today to do that. This does not take away their ability to sell it. This does not take away the ability of a new buyer to make changes. It just puts in place a process that protects what makes Oklahoma City a unique city. And I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Shadid, that's the conclusion of those who signed up to speak. So I don't know if you want to take it from here. Okay. Well, maybe we'll just comments.
I guess I have some questions more than comments. And as you know, I graduated from high school in this building, and I know you say that dates me, but I graduated when I was 10. But I have a lot of fond memories there, and I want to preserve this place. And I have a couple of memories that are not so fond with the principal while I was there. But the bottom line is, I want to preserve this church. I want to preserve these buildings. But I have several questions, and those questions are the physical, mechanical integrity of the building. When I went there to high school there, my graduating ceremony was in the auditorium, and that was notorious for leaking. And so if we do this and then they can't sell it, does this church have the money to maintain the building? Has there been any thought on how we're going to maintain the building so it doesn't just become mothballed and begin to become dilapidated? And so maintenance is a big issue to me. And the other thing that's a big issue, and I just saw it for the first time this morning, was this that Mr. Box referred to as the First Covenant Church of Seattle versus the City of Seattle. It deals with the violations of the church's freedom of religion. But the case that maybe concerns me even more is Keeler versus Mayor and City Council of Cumberland, where the mayor and the city council were sued. And so as of this time, I haven't had the benefit of conferring with our lawyers, our in-house lawyers, as to what the ramifications of this are to us legally. For example, can they sue us for inverse condemnation? And then we get stuck with a big dollar amount that we owe. And these cases seem to suggest that. And so I would like to have the benefit of sitting down with both sides. I'd like to sit down with the church. I'd like to sit down with Lynn's group. And I'd like to ask these questions and have them answered. Number one, what effect is this going to have on the church? Is it going to put the church into bankruptcy? I don't want that. Is it going to cause the church to walk away from the building and where it becomes neglected? I don't want that. What I want is it to be preserved. And I'm really happy to hear that there's 3 potential new buyers. I'd like to know who those buyers are. Are they tire kickers or are they the real deal? And so I want to make myself vote for this, but I can't vote for it where we're at right now. And so it would be my preference that we defer this for 2 weeks to give me and others the opportunity to talk to both sides and to talk to our legal counsel and see what we're setting ourselves up for. Because I darn sure don't want to get hit with an inverse condemnation lawsuit and we end up paying $4 or $5 million in damages. I just don't want that to happen. So that's my thoughts. And David, if you can answer any of those questions as to the physical and mechanical integrity of the building. For example, when it was first built, what is the life expectancy of this building? Does anybody know? Does it have some planned obsolescence where it will no longer be useful?
So I don't have those here, but we're more than willing to get the people that would be necessary to answer those.
And I do know
questions.
that within the last 10 years, there was cranes out there trying to repair the dome. Was that successful? Is it going to be needed in the near future? What is the condition of the building? I just don't have the answers to those questions.
I do know that the entirety of the HVAC system is in need of total replacement. There are significant current maintenance issues that need to be addressed, and because of the nature of it, there are significant ongoing expenses that will just always be there. But there are a host of current issues that are going to have to be addressed at a very significant cost.
But I just don't want to harm the church. I want the church to continue. I want the church to thrive. It's my understanding that the membership number is, what is the membership?
I believe it's less than 50. And in terms of the offer, if there are 3 new offers as reported on a website, that's certainly news to the church and news to the broker representing the church.
Okay, so your position is that there are not 3 new offers.
There was an offer that perhaps is still outstanding. Every offer the church has received in writing, they have responded to. There have been no offers that have gone unresponded to.
So do you have 3 new offers in writing as we sit here today?
No, absolutely not.
Okay, so I guess I would like to say that the effort that I have been expending over the last couple of weeks, along with many, many other people, has been to try to find a win-win solution for this. We want the church to be saved desperately. It is an important part of the fabric of this community. And I would say here that I have personally spoken to 2 people, 2 parties who are interested in making an offer on the church. So this is not hearsay, this is not mystery, but there are no offers currently that the church has accepted.
There's one. There was an offer made,
Right.
we responded to, and there's been no response
But
from
not accepted.
That's right.
So, everybody be clear on that. But there are people in this community, I've spoken to 2, myself. Right, and that's fair, but I'm just saying, there's a lot of rumor. There's a lot of rumor on the website. There are all sorts of things swirling around. I just want to go on the record to say that I personally have spoken to 2 interested parties. Now, how we make a deal work, it's hard. And I guess, I also would suggest, as somebody that's spent a lot of time in the real estate business, there generally are compromises here. There is over 20 acres of property here. The church and the theater sit on 3, David?
I don't know the exact
Maybe
dimensions.
something. I think this may not be popular, but I think we have to be realistic that on some of that other property, there may be the room for some additional development. And that is a win-win for the church and those that want to save the church. So I think my desire would be that we try to buy some time and bring these people together. We live in a state that believes really strongly in personal property rights. And it's hard to make some of these choices. And I'm afraid I would agree with Mark that I would like to know what some of the ramifications are, like inverse condemnation.
David, would you be willing, or would the church be willing to agree that if we defer this they would take no action whatsoever in the way of attempting to begin the process of demolition.
Please. And if you wouldn't mind identifying yourself.
Yes. Steve Felton, chairman of the board for First Christian Church over the last 5.5 years. We do not want that building torn down. I thought we were coming down here to determine where we weren't going to mark it as a landmark building, which would damage our opportunity to sell it. But what I'm hearing is we're down here because this is a demolition resolution.
I think there's some people
It's
that are
not.
concerned
We
that
haven't applied for one. I don't know of anybody that has applied for one. We've had 2 letters of intent over the last 2 years with confidentiality agreements. The confidentiality agreement to me is very important. So we haven't shared information. I don't know where you get your information from one of the clients maybe that had also signed a confidentiality agreement. Can't help you there. And we have responded to every offer. One of them walked away. I mean, if you had something for sale for X amount of dollars and they offered you 20% of that, the meeting's over. We're not in negotiations anymore. Oh, absolutely. We're not going. First Christian Church, as long as I've got a breath, we're not going to file for a demolition permit. If we sell the property, then the council could step in with the new owners if they file for one and take this action. Thank you.
One additional thing, there's been a lot of talk about the Don building. All of that happened without the city imposing its will. The market found a buyer, and they bought it with a willing buyer and a willing seller without the council stepping in and imposing a designation on that building. So we simply ask for the same thing.
make a motion that we defer this item to March the 26th.
Can we add that stipulation that there won't be any kind of permitting requests on the property?
We can't do that really, but
it's non-binding. That was a pretty strong statement.
I feel very comfortable. I feel very comfortable that they will not do anything in the next 2 weeks. But I would like to say that, what he said, they'll sell the church and then the new owner will have to come forward and we'll have to deal with that then. No. The new owner can get a permit at 8 o'clock in the morning and demo it at 8:30 without any kind of conversation or review. That is what will happen. So
can you, I guess, maybe add to the vow, which was very strongly made and I think fairly persuasive, that you also won't sell the property in the next 2 weeks?
I don't think we can go that far, but I think even if a contract came across the desk today, I can't imagine that there'd be a closing in 2 weeks.
I agree, but
even if there was, it is not as simple as somebody walks to the 8th floor and gets their demolition permit and the wrecking ball swings. You have to cap utilities, you have to get Public Works to sign off on it. Despite what they believe happens, there's actually a significant process that goes on, perhaps not in the public forum. I don't even think logistically it'd be possible.
Right.
In 2 weeks to cap utilities and do all the things necessary to get the city to sign off on a demolition permit.
I think the council just wants to know that this is frozen in time for 2 weeks.
We have no intention to do anything.
Other conversations occur.
Until we, appear in 2 weeks to meet with Councilman Stonecipher and perhaps Councilwoman Sawyer and whoever else would like to meet.
Okay. Can I get this back to Councilman Shadid?
may I say one more thing? Also, I know the Freedom Center is on the landmarks list, and it is my recollection that you did not have owner permission before that one was landmarked because there was some owner discrepancy. You couldn't find the owner. So you actually have landmarked a building without the owner's consent before. Thank you.
I have it, just so we're clear.
Nor have I.
Councilman Shadid.
I appreciate the the promises. This began because a member of the board I had a conversation with a member of the board who was concerned that James Cooper was coming to the council on April 9th. They had this under contract. The buyer wanted to demolish all the buildings, and they wanted my help in navigating that process before April 9th. That is what led to the concern, and that's what led to the public outcry in the process. I agree with those, who've indicated that the public should be part of the process. What the fear that I felt during the conversation I had with the board member was that it was very obvious that they didn't understand the city process. They were I don't understand the city process. I didn't understand this historic landmark process till we really got into it until last night. So it was very clear that they didn't understand the process. I agree with those contentions that we should be involved, as I think Meg was saying, we should be involved in trying to make it work, because we can be a third pillar. We can help facilitate what might not otherwise seem financially viable. Just the whole idea that I think it's 32 acres, right? Is it 20? Oh, 22. Okay, it's a lot. It's plenty. I mean, Grant Humphreys came right with a large, kind of like the Wheeler District kind of proposal. I mean, there's a lot that could potentially go on however many acres it is. And I haven't really talked to anyone that understood that you could put a TIF on however many acres that is, 22, whatever it is. So having somebody like Kathy O'Connor and her 40 years of expertise sitting down with whatever parties, with whoever Meg has talked to or whoever else might be interested, I think is invaluable and likely increases the value of the offer to the church. I mean, I'm not in real estate, but when you have a contract with one person versus you have multiple bidders, typically that increases the cause. I mean, the offer, when you know that you have multiple bidders. When you had if you had a potential of a partner like the city doing TIFs or whatever at our disposal, that could increase the value of the offer more. And so I don't believe in the, I think I'm certainly all about reviewing the case law, but I think that this time out and these efforts likely increase the value of the offer ultimately.
So March 26th, I am out of state. I'd ask that we move it to the one after that. And I understand logistically that creates some issues. Perhaps Dr. Shadid is sitting here advocating rather than up there. But I'm out of state on a trip that's been planned for many, many months.
I will say the main thing is, for me, is the commitment not to demolish. I think this all is academic because I think the historic preservation perhaps unanimously takes this action on April 3rd. I mean, I think at the end of the day, what we're doing now is just trying to bridge between April 3rd, when I think it is extremely likely that the Historic Preservation Commission takes this action on April 3rd. So if there's commitment that we're not going to have demolition, that we're going to have the city getting involved in negotiations, I think this is all academic. In a way, passing it today shortens that moratorium. Because if you wait till April 3rd, and then you have 6 months from there, it's kind of a 7-month moratorium. So in a way, if you wanted to minimize the moratorium, you'd pass it today. But I'm okay with a 7-month moratorium as opposed to 6. So if we have that commitment, which is in contradistinction to the phone call that I had, I'm good.
So you want the 26th or not? Do you care?
It's whatever the council.
I'd make a motion that we defer it till April the 9th. Will you be back in town?
So Mark has amended his motion. It is now April 9th for a deferral. There was a second. Maybe I should ask a second again.
Now, just to be clear, so if the Historic Preservation Commission passes it on April 3rd, that would obviate the need for... Right, then we wouldn't hear it.
That's correct.
Would it be on the agenda and then maybe be stricken or something?
It would be on the agenda, and then could be stricken. There would be no need for the council action if the HP Commission initiates.
Okay. With a month's deferral, I suppose I'll ask what some might be thinking, is that commitment that was made good for a month and not just 2 weeks?
Could we do this? Could we do it for 2 weeks and then just defer it again? Just in case anything happens, can we defer it for 2 weeks and then defer it again for 2 weeks?
I'd prefer my client have representation.
I think he's only saying in case of emergency.
Yeah, we're not going to hear it if you're not.
If nothing has happened and then
As long as we're all making symbolic representations that nothing's going to happen, sure.
If they're already saying they aren't going to do anything for up to a month potentially, then what's going to happen in 2 weeks that are going to drive it?
Can't imagine. Only their broken word, I guess, would be the only.
Well, if their word is broken, then guess what? We're probably not talking about it anyway. So.
David, can I ask a question? Are you comfortable? What would you prefer, quite honestly? Would you like a vote today, or would you like to have this deferred?
Well, I guess that depends on what the vote would be. I'd prefer, if we're going to defer it, I'd prefer it to be in April. But certainly my client would like some sense of relief if the resolution was defeated today, and then we can go deal with the HP Commission. I feel a little bit bad for my client, who's a church, who's got a dwindling membership, that's going to have to fight this thing on multiple fronts.
No, I agree, and I am not in favor of the resolution for 2 reasons. First of all, there is a concept of property rights, and the state, and I'm using that in a broad sense of any government, coming in and determining what we should do with our property that we own doesn't sit well with me. Now, I know there's a lot of fascination with socialism, which leads to greater government control, but so far, we're still a republic, and we have private rights to property that we own. But more importantly, for a government to come in and interfere with a church, we have no right to do that. And this certainly does infringe upon that. So I'm completely opposed to the resolution.
Okay. So the motion on the table is currently for a deferral to April 9th.
Yeah.
And that has been motioned and seconded. Yeah. So that's the posture we're in. Is there any other comments? Any other assurances need to be sought? Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll cast our votes on the motion to defer to April 9th. Passes 8-1. Okay. All right. That concludes that topic for today. All right. That brings us to 11C1. 11C1 and 11C2 are related. They both relate to Councilman Shadid's proposals for charter change amendments to be put to the voters on the same day as the ONG franchise election that was previously discussed, July 9th. There are 3 proposed amendments, and I think I'll turn it over to you, Councilman Shadid, to present this.
My preference would be to ban daylight savings time. I'd like to know why you get out of an hour's sleep. And so we'll move this as quickly as we can. I didn't know, I guess, until I saw it on the agenda that all 3 were being combined into one.
Yeah, would be. But all you have to do is debate each one, and then if you don't want one, just move to strike it from the.
So the voters are being asked to vote 3 times.
3 times, correct.
That's what I figured.
Yes.
But technically, as of right now, we're only being asked to vote once, which is, It did also struck me as unusual.
Yeah, for a single subject, you're gonna divide these into three things, right?
Single subject doesn't apply to resolutions, number one. The propositions, there's three different propositions, so they would each be voted on separately by the people.
Okay.
This is always the way we've proposed charter amendments. I see. These are three separate propositions. So you'd see three questions on the ballot, three different questions.
What you're saying is we have to vote on them separately, right?
Well, not as current.
No, you debate them. You can debate them separately and say, I don't like this one, I move that we strike it from the exhibit. So
That would be necessary. Right now, it's one vote
I
for us.
kind of wish we were doing three different ones, but, and I'll explain. But the first thing is
You
that-
could move right now to amend your resolution to split into three parts.
Move it to amend it as three separate resolutions because they're all going to be identical.
Okay, I move to have three separate resolutions.
Right.
Okay, motion and a second. Any discussion on that amendment? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously.
Okay, then the second clarification is that all we're doing today, this is like a first hearing, basically. We're not voting on the resolutions. We're just voting whether to have them heard on what day, Kenny? April
23rd. That's
April 23rd, after I'm gone, Meg's gone, new council. It's the new council membership that would vote on these, not today. All today we're voting on is, do we want to pass them along to the new?
We're introducing them.
To introduce them.
And that's because of the notice limitations on charter amendments. You have to start the notice within a particular period, then you have to publish it every day until you're no more than 30 days before the election. So if you pass this today, we'd have to publish these amendments, whichever amendments you adopt, 40 times. Whereas if we do it on the 23rd, we only publish it the minimum number of times, which is 21, because you have to publish it every day after you start publishing.
Kenny, while we're on that technical side here, so this is under items from council. It's sponsored by Councilman Shadid. His name is next to it. How will that look on April 23rd? This is somewhat unusual circumstance, I suppose. This actually probably is an applicable question to the last resolution that just got deferred past his tenure as well.
You could do it two different ways. You could have someone else take over for Ed. He can recruit someone to be the item from council, and that's probably what he should do on the one that was deferred because council actually hasn't endorsed it yet. But if council introduces one of these today, then technically you could probably, Francis agrees, you could probably put it on just under items from individual
Yes, it would
items.
be under items from individual.
Right. Vote.
Items for separate vote because
Right.
there's no longer a sponsor.
But it's been introduced.
Yes, but it continues.
Good to-do item for your last resolution, though. You need to find a sponsor before you leave. Okay, got it.
Question if I could.
Yes.
If we're doing this on the 23rd now, on the 23rd, if on one of the items, for example, the salary, if I didn't like the salary in that, can I make an amendment at that time? Or do I have to
No, Ed amended it to separate them into three different resolutions.
Are you saying that you don't like it at all, or you want to change the number?
I'm saying I want to change something on one of the three. Do I have to pre-submit that in some type of a written one, or can I do it as the debate goes on the 23rd?
If you know what amendment you want now, we can write it up and put it on the agenda.
Yeah, Councilman McAtee, the items can be amended today and they can be amended at the final
And they
hearing.
can be then. Thank you. That's the
Correct.
question.
But we haven't introduced any of these yet. Each of those will have a vote today. Okay? There's a lot of technical aspects to this.
Yeah.
Do you wish to, Councilman Shadid, do you wish to speak to the substance of the three resolutions now?
With one more caveat, just about why we're bringing this up now and what I mean, because of the ONG franchise election on July 9th.
Yes.
On for July 23rd.
July 23rd.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry, July 9th for the election, yes, you're correct.
Okay, July 9th. So that presents the opportunity to have charter amendments. I believe After I'm off of council, myself and, for starters, a couple of dozen other people, like-minded people who just want kind of things like this, which we would consider good government initiatives, I believe will bring forward initiative petitions along the line of all three of these. And so I believe that it's a necessary courtesy to present it to the council before doing an initiative petition. That's just my own personal belief. Because in this case, there's not enough time to do an initiative petition before the July 9th election. That would mean that should it go to initiative petition and get across the goal line, it would be on the MAPS ballot. And I don't want anybody against any which then would turn into a campaign. I don't want anybody to say, why would you put salary increases on the MAPS ballot, right? I want there to be an opportunity for the people to vote on these things on July 9th. For a couple of reasons, that, and also I think they're important, and I think they should be implemented, as soon as possible. But taking them one at a time, starting with the 1927 stipulation in our charter, not just having a dual office provision like state law says, that you can't be an officer of any other government body and be an officer of the city. We took it a step further in 1927, and we added the words officer or employee. And I'm not sure why they did that in 1927. It goes far beyond state law. Nobody seems to know why that was done. It's, in my opinion, it's archaic. It's unnecessary. There are, I believe the largest employer in Oklahoma City would be government employees, right? So, especially if you include Tinker Air Force Base. So, you're eliminating thousands of people from being able to serve in city government by adding the two words "or employee," including teachers, and which would include my successor, James Cooper. I want to say one issue on that. In the Ward 2 election, I was very, very disciplined, stringent. I was very neutral. I didn't talk to any of the candidates. I didn't even read about the election until after it was over, and then I talked to James, and I learned for the first time. James already knew that he was going to have to resign from being a middle school teacher at Jefferson, but I didn't know that. So he shared that with me after the election. I put that on Facebook, and hundreds of people, felt the same kind of outrage that I did, that a teacher would be forced to resign to serve on the council. So James didn't ask me, to put this forward. He didn't ask me to put it on social media. He didn't ask for any of this. He knew what he was doing, and he still agreed to make that sacrifice. What I'm saying is, I don't understand, the need for that sacrifice going forward. And if we were able to vote on this on July 9th, would that be in effect by the fall school semester?
Maybe. It depends on how quickly the governor approves it.
Okay.
Even if it's after it's approved by the voters, you have to submit it to the governor, and he has to review it and sign off on it.
Okay, well, there's a pressing issue for James Cooper, but it's also much bigger than just James Cooper. It's thousands and thousands of federal and state employees. I think we're already limiting the pool of people who can run for city council, and just by eliminating, these thousands from the pool, you're continually constricting the number of people that can run for office. So, unless somebody has a reason why you would go far beyond state law and exclude federal and state employees from serving on council, then I'd move that we forward this to April 29th, 23rd.
So you're moving basically an amended version of of 11C1, specifically regarding the qualification for not holding two positions.
And Kenny and his staff did a great job on the staff reports, and they have a copy of I think it's Article 4, Section 8, and the specific words that would be stricken. And you can see how that would read in the staff reports between now and April 23rd. But basically, you're eliminating the two words "or employee." You can't be a state or federal officer, and then you eliminate "or employee." And that's it.
Okay, so we've got a motion.
The motion, say it again, please. I'm so sorry.
We're just moving that, we're introducing to be heard for final decision on April 23rd, the resolution on allowing federal and state employees to serve on city council. Selected, there are certain heads of departments and things that can.
That's proposed amendment number 1 on the Exhibit A and the related ballot. It's on Exhibit A, proposed amendment number 1. That's the holding two positions section, right?
Okay.
All right, we have a second then. Councilman McAtee.
Question, does this affect school teachers and Board of Education at all?
Yes, school teachers then can run for city council and serve.
So that's included in there also?
Yes, it does not. Board of Education could not because they are officers. They are officers under state law. So they could not run for both the both the Board of Education and the City Council at the same time. But teachers could.
Okay. Did you have a comment, question?
I do have a comment. And I'm very sympathetic to the position of James, and I'm very sympathetic to the position of teachers, and I want them to be able to run for office. But when we did this in 2009, I was on the committee that oversaw the revisions to the charter. Willa Johnson was the chair. It took us about, I was asking Debbie Martin, I think it was about 9-10 months to make substantial changes to the charter. And I do not, and you may disagree with this, and I hope I don't upset you, but I do not think we should piecemeal this. I think that we should have a committee that should look at the charter in its entirety, because I know there are several things that I want to revisit. I know there's some things that David Greenwell wants to visit. I know there's some things that Francis wants to revisit. And so you can't just send 3 or 4 to the voters, and then 3 or 4 to the voters, and then 3 or 4 to the voters. We need to look at this from a big picture. We need to have a committee that looks at everything and clean the charter up, because it's been 10 years. It needs to be cleaned up. And so my preference would be that we have the mayor form a committee, he appoints a chair, and that we look at the charter in its entirety instead of doing this in piecemeal. And I commend you for doing this. I know you're trying to get some stuff done before you get out of office, but I really think we need to do this looking at the whole charter and not just 3 or 4 pieces of it.
And I agree with that. I think, though, with single subject, the voters deserve one item at a time. And I think you can do it. I don't think there's a downside to having it on different elections. And pretty much everything you've said, I've said over the years. I mean, I've been asking for charter changes. And so there is a possibility in government to study things to death, for things to get delayed. I mean, I've said what you just said from the horseshoe probably 6-7 years ago. I mean, and here we are. So maybe that gets done, maybe it doesn't. But with a vote on April 23rd, and you've got a election that O&G is paying for. You could solve this before the next school year. I think the fact that we have a city council person with this, with this affecting them directly, warrants maybe a little more consideration than some of the more technical charter amendments that would take quite a bit of time to study.
And just to piggyback on what Mark said, when I ran for and was elected mayor, I recognized it's on my list that we were overdue probably for a charter change committee like Mark served on as a citizen a decade ago. You probably need to do that at least every decade. And so I certainly, it's irrespective of the things he's bringing forward, that he's explained why he feels they're more urgent. But I certainly commit to you that by the end of this calendar year, I'll appoint and ask a group to do that same task again, with probably an eye towards a 2020, maybe the general election, because as you said, it took 9 months to a year to go through that process. And there's a lot of stuff, and we'd certainly take referrals from anybody, including former councilmen, if they want to be a part, of that conversation. So that you can care or not care about that in regards to your votes today, but I do want to say that since you brought up the topic. It's certainly on my mind and it's certainly on my to-do list, and I think there is a little sense of urgency in that by the end of this year we should get started so we can have it before the voters in separate questions on their 2020 ballots, most likely in November of 2020.
And the one thing I would say, I have learned from you, is it's important to be transparent, and sometimes it's important to slow things down and take a look at the big picture. And I just really think we need a committee to look at the charter in its entirety and submit that at one time to the voters.
If we were to put this on the ballot in 2020, would the changes still come into effect in 2022, which is what would happen now, with regard to salaries in particular?
Well, right now, this is being presented as being on this July's ballot.
Okay, I'm just asking the question, if we were to...
If you were to amend this to be on the ballot in November of 2020. Okay.
On the salary, she's mentioned the salary, we'll talk about next, wouldn't go into effect till 2022 for the mayor and 2023 for the council.
Right.
So how would that be impacted
Okay.
if we were to...
The way it would be impacted is if you had the vote in November of 2020 for the salary, and it were approved, as long as the governor approves it before the February council election in 4 wards, then it could go into effect for those people in 2023. If it's not approved by the election date in February of 2021, then those folks have to wait till 2025 to actually get the increased salary. You cannot change the salary during a term of office except by operation of law. So this has to be in effect before the next elections to go into effect in accordance with what's in there now.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to introduce the officer proposal.
Proposed charter amendment number 1.
Any further comments on that? Okay. Councilman Shadid, anything else? Okay. No further discussion. We'll cast our votes.